Okay, it is now 4 o'clock. Do we have everyone we need to start the meeting? It looks like we do. Okay. I'll call the meeting together, both the City Council meeting, successor agency to the Palm Desert Redevelopment Agency, and the Housing Authority meeting to order for Thursday, January 27th, 2002. And since we did not have a closed session, we have nothing to report out from a closed session. We have no awards, presentations, and appointments, but let's go back to roll call, please.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan?
You're muted.
Present.
It doesn't show that you are on the screen, but
Councilmember Kelly?
still muted.
Here.
Councilmember Nestandi?
Here.
Councilmember Quintanilla?
Present.
Mayor Harnick? Mayor Harnick? Mayor Harnick? My apologies. Mayor Harnick? No? All present. Harnick?
Any luck, Neve?
Now we can hear you, Mayor.
Mayor Harnick?
Okay,
think the mayor
so
can hear you.
while we're trying to address Neve's issue, since we did say we would start at 4 o'clock, can we take roll call and note it?
Roll call, please. She's calling for roll call.
Neve, is that acceptable? Okay, so we can just do it. Let's see if I can do this in alphabetical order. So Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
What am I missing? Didn't we do?
Oh,
roll
this is
call already?
really a problem. He's muted
Yeah.
too.
Why don't
We
we
got
why don't we
bigger
take
issues.
5 minutes?
And
We'll get
so
IT.
is our city manager.
Yeah, why don't we take 5 minutes? I've got IT looking into the issue. I will go over and talk to the mayor real quick.
It's like an IT issue. And Councilmember Kelly, can you try and speak and see if we can hear you?
Testing,
Nope.
1, 2.
You can?
Yes,
me?
we all hear each other.
Is it mine?
Let me put that.
Because the microphones or the speakers switch themselves, so I was trying to send a chat, but that's the wildest thing in the world of Zoom.
I know. So, yeah, so we're all hearing each other except the mayor. Is that correct?
Yes.
We all hear each other. Okay.
All right.
Okay, now can we try?
Can you hear us now?
Everything is good.
Yay.
And I will say, just let me fess up right now, that was my issue. Okay, so if we could have everybody back and start all over.
Okay.
Sorry to throw you that curve, Nate.
That's okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan?
Present.
Councilmember Kelly?
Still here.
Councilmember Nestandi?
Here.
Councilmember Quintanilla?
Present.
Mayor Harnick?
I am here now. Yes,
All
thank you.
present. Thank you.
Okay, we will now go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. And we will have invocation by Mayor Pro Tem Sabby Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Since our council last met, our country honored a great man who bravely shaped this country and made it better than it was before him. Of course, I am speaking of Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King was and remains an inspiration to many of us. Among his many quotes, two have always stood out in my mind. He said, "We may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. And we must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools." Wise words indeed. They remind us that regardless of differences of opinion, differences in origin, and differences in life experiences, we are, as Dr. King said, in the same boat, that we must work together as brothers and sisters to accomplish successes, and that in order to work together, we must respect each other and especially to honor the differences that distinguish us and bind us. Let us keep these wise words in mind as we conduct the business of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Neve Ortega, is this a good time to give instructions for participating in the meeting?
Absolutely. For those who are participating on Zoom, if you would like to make a public comment, click on the raised hand button on your screen or on your smartphone. If you're calling in using only the phone line, press *9 to raise your hand to speak. And when called upon, press *6 to unmute your line. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes and state your first and last name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we will now move to the mayor and council member reports and requests for actions. This is your opportunity to give brief reports that may have come from any meetings you have that the community may be interested in, and additionally ask for any requests for action. So let's start with Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. Recently, council member Nestante and myself represented Palm Desert at the Cove Communities Commission. And for anyone listening who is not familiar with that function, there are some key aspects of government that Palm Desert pursues collaboratively with Rancho Mirage and Indian Wells. Those include public safety, both fire and police, and also the Jocelyn Senior Center. One of the topics that was covered was an initiative for automated license plate readers at intersections. And it might sound like those exist just to catch folks zooming through red lights. But the presentation brought home that the use of these devices in Rancho Mirage has been tremendously helpful in tracking movement of vehicles and solving a host of crimes, including some significant crimes in Palm Desert. So we both wanted to check. It's our understanding that the possibility of adding similar devices at Palm Desert intersections is currently being considered by the Public Safety Commission. Is that right?
That is correct. I believe Mr. Firestein has that ready to go on the next agenda for discussion.
Terrific. We just wanted to make sure. That's all for tonight.
Okay, thank you. And next we'll go to Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lately, just going to our meetings as continuing, and my brain is so scrambled right now. So sorry about that. I had the opportunity to attend the Cultural Preservation Committee, and I had a great time learning about Sandpiper and the historic community in Palm Desert. And so we'll be hearing more about them down the line, so I won't take up more there. I had the privilege of being on the iHub advisory with Madam Mayor, and that was a great opportunity to build some exciting opportunities coming forward. And also, I am proud to announce that I was selected to be part of the Coachella Valley Water Academy for this year. So bringing additional training for water conservation and greener innovations for Palm Desert. So I'm pretty excited for that. And I yield, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. How could I forget? I wanted to have a last-ditch effort at giving my colleagues the opportunity to reconsider that we could go to districts by just a simple motion. So just something to consider instead of saving the city the opportunity of going to the cost of election. So just a thought to sit with. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. So I did attend my share of meetings, and I'll just say there's no significant reportable action. But I do want to take this opportunity to thank Sergeant Woolridge, Sergeant Kozer, and Deputy Nelson for being so kind and generous in taking me through an extensive tour of our dispatch center and training center, which is in the Civic Center adjacent to City Hall. After all these years, I still learn so much about what goes in there, and my appreciation and respect for the men and women who watch over us and provide safety for all of us. As much admiration as I had before, it has even been elevated. So thank you to the individuals I named for taking me on the tour, and thank you to the men and women who serve our community in public safety. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And Councilmember Nastandi.
No comments this evening, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I just have a few things, and we do have ongoing meetings on Lupin Plaza, and we do, of course, welcome public input on that. And also, Councilmember Kelly and I are working on Walk and Roll, which is really a study about how to connect our community safely with bicycles and pedestrians. And those are ongoing, and that is also something we welcome public input on. And as far as housing, and we have been at Southern California Association of Governments continually meeting with our representatives, our assemblymen, and our senators in California to explore how we can go further and get the housing we need and that will really complement our community. The other, I have one request. Are there any other requests? I kind of thought I rolled them in together, but does anyone have any requests? And it appears not. So I have a request. We are coming up upon our 50th anniversary as an incorporated city, and that will be in 2023. And I think we might want to explore a seal for our city that is relative, relevant, and timely. So I would just like to know if we are open to entertaining that, and if we are, I think it's a good idea.
I concur.
That's all I have. So I do want to announce that we do have a, we have public, where are they? Public hearings, and one is scheduled for 4:30. So wherever we are, we will conclude that and then go to that public hearing. So for now, we will go to the non-agenda public comments, and this is an opportunity for the public to speak on issues that are not on the agenda. for a maximum of 3 minutes. Speakers may utilize one of the 3 options that you have heard about earlier. And because of the Brown Act does not allow any of the bodies meeting here today to take action, we may briefly respond, but we will refer the matter to staff for report and recommendation at a future meeting. So having said that, is there anyone, and I am looking in the participants box, is there anyone who would like to speak to a non-agendized item? And I see one hand up, ending with the last 4 digits, 6078, the phone number.
Caller ending in 6078, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Jared. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you very much for having me being able to talk today. I'm here to the first time talking with City Council or being a part of this public sort of setting. I live in Palm Desert and I live on El Cortez Street. Currently, there's a 2-story home being built directly next door to me, an addition of a 2nd story being built. It's a large 2nd story with 3 floor-to-ceiling windows or sliders. I'm not sure yet. They're just openings that are directly 30 feet up in the air, directly looking over the entire property of mine. So the entire pool area, our backyard, and not only has this cut off any bit of view of the snow-capped mountains that we previously had, but it also completely eliminates any sense of privacy whatsoever in our yard. So we have 3 big, large windows. I did send an email earlier prior to 12 o'clock. So if you're able to look at those pictures, they're there. It's kind of an egregious loss of privacy. So myself, my 4 children, my wife, we walk out of our back door to, entertain or to go in the pool. And we see a gigantic 2nd story building with 3 big windows peering over our property, along with a rooftop deck coming out of those windows and doors. I was never aware, nor was I notified of any changes to the zoning here. I've only had a couple of conversations with Kevin, a planner, and also Martin Alvarez, who essentially have told me that the codes have changed, the zoning has changed. They're now R2 and a 30-foot roof is acceptable. They did not notify any neighbors, and apparently they feel they don't need to notify neighbors to get any sort of possible, extreme negative impacts on the surrounding buildings and people. So I bought this house 5 or 6 years ago. I reside in it with my wife and 3 kids. The city did not make any provisions to ensure any sort of privacy. So it's really upsetting. I am working with Martin Alvarez to try to get something changed and to try to at least implement a hedge screen wall, which the city did not require or mandate upon this person to have a hedge wall in order to at least, ensure privacy still. I'm sure my property value is way down with this big, huge 2nd story built next to me. It's an addition to a home and absolutely no privacy at all. I think that one view of those pictures will kind of show what the city of Palm Desert has allowed to happen. Apparently, the planner, Kevin, I spoke to, as well as Martin,
Thank you, sir. Your time is up. Thank you, sir. Your 3 minutes are up.
You said you sent in an email, sir? So we will follow up with you. Thank you so much for letting us know. Okay, I see no other hands up for non-agendized items. Okay, so let's move to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and may be approved by 1-minute motion. Are there any items on the consent item calendar that anyone would like to pull? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
move approval of consent items.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes,
Councilmember Nastandi,
Yes,
Councilmember Quintanilla,
Aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to the action calendar, which is number 14, resolution to approve signature authority for all California Department of Resources Recycling and Recovery, parenthetically Cal Recycle grants for which the city of Palm Desert is eligible. And that is that Tricia Stahl who will be reporting.
Just all management analyst for environmental programs. Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Cal Recycle requires a resolution as part of its grant application process. The resolution before you would designate the city manager as the signing authority for the city on Cal Recycle grants and would allow staff to apply for applicable grants for 5 years from the date of adoption. I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, seems reasonable that the city manager should be signer. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
move to approve.
I second the motion.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes,
Councilmember Nastandi,
yes,
Councilmember Quintanilla,
Aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. We'll go to 15 now. Request to authorize the city manager to negotiate a contract with Kemper Sports for the maintenance and operations of the Desert Willow Golf Resort. Contract number C42210. And we have Mr. Alvarez.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the City Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Let me do a quick screen share and we'll go through a couple slides. Okay, can everybody see that? All right. So this is an item that started last fall when the City Council authorized staff to proceed with a request for proposals for operations and maintenance of the Desert Willow Golf Resort. And as we see here on the screen, the city owns 2 municipal golf courses, golf amenities, and a clubhouse known as Desert Willow Golf Resort. The current management contract that we have is set to expire at the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, 2022. And so as I mentioned last fall, we started down a path of preparing a request for proposals, and I'll be referring to that as an RFP, and then going through an evaluation and selection process. The City Council also authorized us to form a Desert Willow RFP evaluation committee, which I will discuss and illustrate a little bit later. Also in the fall of 2021, we met with the City Council in a study session where we went through and detailed components that would be included in the RFP. We discussed the agreement term, we discussed the management fee structure, also discussed performance incentive and a radius restriction. And those items are also identified in your staff report in a little bit more detail. The RFP process started in October of 2021. We set a submittal deadline for the RFPs for November 12th, 2021. And at the end of that term, we had 2 firms that submitted proposals. The first firm was Golf Automation, a company out of Las Vegas, Nevada. The second company was Kemper Sports out of Northbrook, Illinois. And that is our current operator. The evaluation committee, as discussed and directed by the council, composed of a variety of different members of the community, key stakeholders, including 2 council members, Councilmember Jonathan and Councilmember Kelly. We had a member from the Palm Desert Recreational Facilities Corporation. That is the corporation that assists us in managing the Desert Willow Golf Resort as it pertains to food and beverage. We had a resident and member of the Palm Desert Finance Committee, and also a member of a local golf and hospitality sector. And of course, we had also various members of city departments, pretty much a across City Hall. So as we went through the RFP process, we set forth criteria and scoring that we could quantitatively address the quality and the experience of the firms that submitted proposals. That information there is here on the screen, giving us some points and preference for clarity and conformance to the proposals that they submit, all of the requirements that we needed to see to evaluate the quality, the content, including a work plan, their approach of how they would manage Desert Willow. We asked for, of course, key personnel experience and qualifications, and then we also ranked their fee proposal. So a total score of 100 was assigned. The evaluation committee both did a written evaluation, and also we had interviews that we had scheduled on January 12th of 2022. After both the written and in-person evaluations, or via Zoom in this case, the evaluation committee average score for Kemper Sports was 97 points, and the average score for Golf Automation was 33. The evaluation committee unanimously agreed that Kemper Sports was the most qualified firm, and recommended that the City Council consider pursuing a contract with Kemper Sports to continue managing Desert Willow Golf Resort. Staff has prepared a recommendation that would allow, if approved by the City Council, the City Manager, City Attorney, to negotiate a contract with Kemper Sports. The contract would come back to the City Council and would be in front of you with all the different terms and conditions that will be negotiated in the coming weeks. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or any comments? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll go straight to comments. You know, as the scoring indicated, Kemper Sports demonstrated that they are head and shoulders above their competition. I think we're very fortunate to have them manage Desert Willow. I think we're truly getting the best of the best. And I'm prepared to move for approval of staff recommendation. I would also suggest, however, that currently we have a 3-year contract. I would suggest that staff explore a 5-year contract in this next round, and with reasonable extensions.
I second that motion, concurring with Councilmember Jonathan as a participant in this process, that it was highly useful in establishing the extent to which Kemper distinguishes itself from the competition.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi?
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla?
Aye.
Mayor Harnick?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. And I would recommend that you move to the public hearing item for 4:30.
Thank you very much for keeping us on track. Okay, so on your agenda, that would be,
Is that 22?
public hearing number 22. Public hearing on the redrawing of council member district boundaries. And this is a result of the census. So we have Mr. Firestein presenting. Is that accurate? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of City Council, Andy Firestein. Heather Horning and I are here this afternoon representing staff. We are also joined by Mal Richardson, who will be giving council a presentation at this second of 4 public hearings on our census redistricting. I do also want to add that we had our first public workshop last Thursday, where the tools were introduced to the public, and the public was invited to begin mapping the new district boundaries. Tonight, you will see several maps. These are draft maps, and we are continuing to work through iterations of what those maps may look like. And with that, I will introduce Mal Richardson, who will give a presentation to council.
Thank you, Andrew. Council, Madam Mayor, thank you for having me back this evening. This is the exciting part of the redistricting process, where we go from the law and the theory into the weeds and look at maps and the demographics behind those maps and start giving direction. And this is an iterative process. As was mentioned, we have some draft maps for you. There's no expectation that we have somehow struck gold the first time through, but this is a process. There are 4 public hearings, workshops, et cetera, that allow us to find a final map that works for hopefully everybody. That is difficult to find one that works for everybody, but hopefully one that satisfies all of your criteria. So I'm going to share my screen so we can view the PowerPoint presentation. And what we're going to do is, can you see that? Yes? Okay, wonderful. So we will go through this PowerPoint. This is very similar. In fact, it's nearly identical to the PowerPoint that we went through at our last public hearing. The biggest change, the most important change, is that we now have 2 draft maps to look at along with demographic data. So I will just briefly talk about the process that's required of us by law and some of the standards. I won't spend as much time on this because you're very familiar with this by now. So this is the agenda, timelines, reviewing draft maps, and then also the next steps and hearings. Of course, there are 5 seats in Palm Desert. 4 are in District 2. 1 is in District 1. This is the process that is required by law, as was noted. We are in public hearing 2. This is our opportunity to take a look for the first time at draft maps, to receive public input, to have a conversation among council about communities of interest, about the boundaries, if they work, if they don't work, what tweaks you'd like to see in further iterations of these draft maps coming back at the 3rd public hearing. Then we have a 3rd public hearing. A 4th public hearing is when an ordinance is adopted by the council that approves the final map. As was mentioned the last 2 times, there are a series, an overlay of laws that apply to this process. We start with the Constitution and with federal law that stands for the proposition that we have to respect equal rights. We also have to strive for equal population. As was mentioned last time, it's a little bit different here in Palm Desert because we are also subject to a settlement agreement stemming from a CVRA challenge. And that changes the otherwise applicable 10% deviation requirement. Here we have a deviation of about 60%, 80% in District 2, and 20% in District 1. And so we have to stay within the confines of that agreement. The Fair Maps Act, however, which is the middle column, does apply. And that looks at things like geographical contiguity, respecting communities of interest, et cetera. That's what we're really going to be focused on as we look at the draft maps today, to determine whether or not these new district boundary lines adequately respect these criteria. Okay, so here you have your existing districts. I think you're all familiar with this. District 1 right there in the middle. Looks a little bit odd, only to ensure that it had the proper population balance, and we've tried to adhere as close as possible to these existing district boundaries with the redrawn district boundaries. That is one of the kind of sub-criteria in the Fair Maps Act, right? If you can stay as close as possible to those boundaries, it's a nice thing to do. And as you'll see, we've tried to do that with the new district boundaries. Okay, so these are your numbers with the existing district boundaries. As we talked about, as you can see in the 3rd column, your population percentages are not in compliance with the settlement agreement. 18.1% is off by 0.3, and then 81.9 is also off by 3, or 0.3, I should say. That has to be rectified. Now, your current District 1 has the possibility of being majority minority Hispanic. And as we talked about last time, that was the primary criterion the council was interested in as we drew these new maps, right? Was focusing on creating a majority minority district. So we've been hyper focused on that single criterion, also trying to, as I said, keep these boundaries as similar as possible to the existing ones. And then, as required, stay within the population deviation mandated by the settlement agreement. Okay. We've talked about these issues, and we can now move on to the draft maps. This is the moment you've all been waiting for. Let me just explain how we're going to go about doing this. So I'm going to give you a preview on this PowerPoint slide of each map. It's not going to be in any kind of detail. It'll be tough to see, but have patience, because what I'll do after I show each map and the demographics underlying the map is I'll toggle to a Google tool that allows us to see the map in detail. Also allows us to overlay the map with the existing boundaries. And so you can see exactly what changed. We can zoom in, you can ask questions, and we can go into that detail. So if you feel like the first map slide is too far pulled out, have patience, we can pull in as close as you'd like. So having said that, here's your first option. Now, this map option, you can take a close look at that. What it does is it extends the northeast boundary up to Hovelly Lane. Hope I pronounced that correctly, and then fills in the area west of the Civic Center over to Monterey Ave. It also moves the western edge of District 1 over to Highway 111, and then pushes the southern boundary below Highway 111. So those are the primary changes. Otherwise, it's fairly similar to your existing boundaries. Now, we're going to drill down into this in about two slides. What does this do for you demographically? Well, we were not aiming for perfect population balance. That's what happened with this one. Most importantly, it gives you a majority minority Hispanic District 1. It actually gets you to, I believe, 50.4%, 50.2% voting age population. That's the VAP there in District 1. And total population is 55% Hispanic. Okay, so those are your numbers for this first option. So again, we have total population balance falls within the permitted range. We preserve majority minority Hispanic voting district, again at 50.2%, and it generally follows the boundaries of the current district with those additions that I mentioned. So at this point, I'm going to stop this share and toggle over to let's see. Make sure you can see this. Oh, can you all see that? The Google map? Okay, so I'm going to pull out here. So these are your existing district boundaries. District 1, can you see my cursor there?
Mm-hmm.
District 1 in the middle, District 2 surrounding District 1. What I'm going to do now is overlay option 1 on your existing district boundaries. Once I do that, I'm going to pull in to see a more close-up view of District 1, because that's really what we're interested in, is where District 1 and District 2 interact. So here's your overlay. And now I'll zoom in so we can see it. Okay, so let me just unoverlay that. That isn't a word, I just made it up, but you can go with it. Again, there's your existing 1-2 interface. And as I overlay it, you can see the additions. So we have the addition over here to the west, the addition here to the south, the addition right here, west of the Civic Center area, and then up here, north to Hovelly. So those are your primary changes between option 1 and your existing districts. And at this point, there are bound to be questions, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I see Councilmember Kelly has her hand up for a question.
Yes, thank you. And if you can enlarge that a bit further as you did before. I want to ask about some changes I think I'm seeing here, which you did not feature, to see if I'm looking at it correctly.
Okay.
The first of those is what shows as a purple area, just within it. If you move your cursor a little bit to the left and then up, it's the purple area, which has written inside it City of Palm Desert, Mag Falls, Palm Desert Charter Middle School.
Oh, yes, right here.
Now, if I'm looking at this correctly, that segment is currently part of District 1, but this option removes it from District 1. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's a great question. It's actually one that we discussed as our team yesterday as we worked through this. We actually put together a third option that included this area and this area up here, so it could look more contiguous. The problem with including this area especially is that it dropped your Hispanic population down. So the option that we ran, the map that we ran with these areas included, dropped the Hispanic voting age population from 50.2 in this map to 46.8.
Wow.
With that option. So that's the reason that we didn't include that, because of that drop in Hispanic voting age population.
All right, I'll reserve comments for the comment time, because we featured the majority minority issue as more important than more important than how close we get precisely to 20%. That doesn't mean it's more important than everything. But if you could stay where you are, I have a couple more questions about that same vicinity. If you could zoom back as you were.
Back here?
Yeah, that vicinity we were just discussing is part of what's directly south of it. It's a neighborhood surrounding the schools, surrounding the middle school and Abraham Lincoln Elementary School. If we look just to the north of that, am I understanding correctly that this option does add a sliver, kind of one street of houses just north of the wash, which would be one street out of Portola Country Club?
Yes, that's exactly what you're seeing. This is a new addition right here.
Because what's directly north of the wash is a gated community called Portola Country Club. So if these proposals are pulling one street out of that community, it's probably worth talking about. And I want to ask directly to the left of that, where we see a finger reaching out out of the narrowest part of this map. Is that similarly kind of reaching out to grab one street out of Monterey Country Club?
That's also, so this right here and this, and I apologize for not noting that. These are additions to both option 1 and option 2 in order to get the proper balance. But those are, yes, this is an addition to the map right here, and it grabs just this sliver right there.
So, again, I'll just feature those are probably fronts for discussion as to whether other priorities warrant grabbing one street out of a gated community.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I wanted to thank you very much for presenting such a clear tool and very easy to see and use. And I appreciate that you can instantly update. I had already had it on my screen with 2 options refreshed, and now I had the 3rd. So I appreciate that it's able to be viewed live. I share the same concerns that that Councilmember Kelly presented. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I am concerned for how those seem to be the same kind of tentacles reaching. I believe that I may have even mentioned how there are strange things like in Wilmington, it has the strangest, longest appendage. And I don't think that that conserves the integrity of those neighborhoods. And I think that the inverse is also true for the schools. That is the heart of the community. And I would like to see if there would be another option to maybe remove from the further outer limits and include the center of the school zone. I just think it looks very strange to cut that out. I mean, you've got that strange little section that's cut out beneath the park. So I think that we need to come up with something that makes it more contiguous. More contiguous. I think that is the ultimate spirit of the CVRA, is making sure that we have a contiguous neighborhood. And this just, I don't think that we're quite there, but I appreciate that this is the first start and this is where we begin the discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, please.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, is the report continuing? Because
yes.
I'm holding my comments. Okay, so.
There's one further option that we will review.
Yeah, you haven't gotten option 2. So if we can, I'd like to see that before I provide my comment. Thank you.
Okay, and before we move on, if I may, can you, on this screen as you present it now, can you toggle back and forth just a couple times just so we can, or I can really have it in my mind before we go to the next options?
If I'm going too fast with my toggle.
No, I kind of like that toggle. If you could do
know.
that a couple times, that's a good thing.
I'll
So
count
this
like
is,
3 Mississippi.
this is existing.
And that's new. So you can see where things drop out and get added in.
Okay, and okay. All right, thank you. Is everyone satisfied with what they've seen, and should we move on? Okay, Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, I just want to ask one further question that might help us. The rather large area just to the left of the word Civic Center Park, which is added, yes, in these options. Am I correct that that's predominantly College of the Desert? So it wasn't drawn into the existing district because it doesn't consist of residences. But am I seeing this correctly when I infer that that doesn't bring a whole lot of new residences with it?
I think that's accurate.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what we'll do now, I will stop the share of this, and unfortunately you have to go back and forth in your screen shares on Zoom. Okay, So we were on map option 1. We've talked through that.
One moment, Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up. Did you wish to say something at this point?
Yes, just a follow-up question. I'm on following up on the last question about essentially the College of the Desert area. Your answer puzzles me. If it doesn't add a lot of residents, why add it? What impact does it have on either the 80-20 or the majority minority?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? So that is not a population dense area. I mean, there is some population there. It's really a matter of contiguity, right? To the extent that you can create contiguous lines, you certainly want to. That's one of the things that we're talking about here with those kind of odd arms that go out. We're trying to create as contiguous a district as possible within the parameters that are given by the Fair Maps Act and our settlement agreements. That's probably the main thing, is just contiguity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so takes us to map option 2. Now this is almost identical to map option 1 with two primary differences. The first is that instead of going all the way to the west and having your boundary at Highway 111, it stops short of that. And the second is that the southern boundary ends at Highway 111, does not dip past Highway 111. Okay, so those are your main differences. Otherwise, it's essentially the same map. Demographically, it actually works out better. It's at 51.7% Hispanic voting age population as opposed to 50.2, if you recall. So you have a 1.5% increase. The deviation's a little bit larger, but it's still well within the range, right? So we have a higher Hispanic voting age population. We are well within the settlement agreement range. And these findings are exactly what I've talked about. You're within your range. It's basically the same map with the exception of those changes. So having said that, let me go back onto the Google tool. And so you can see that map. So I'm going to take the existing districts off just for a second so we don't have too much overlay. So there's option 1.
Okay, it's not showing up right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you see it now?
No, it just says you've started screen sharing, but just, oh, there we go. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, my computer had to catch up to my voice. Okay, so here we have map option 1 that we've talked about. And here's map option 2. So you simply remove this western edge and this southern edge that bleeds past Highway 111. I'll toggle that back and forth once or twice so you can see it, but it's pretty simple what's being done. So we have less population in District 1, but that reduction in overall population leads to an increase in the percentage of Hispanic voting age population. It becomes a stronger majority minority district by losing these two edges. And then I can take option 1 off and overlay that with the existing districts, which we've already talked about in terms of the feedback with this area and these two arms up here, as well as the College of the Desert. So that's a pretty simple change between option 1 and option 2.
Okay. Now are we ready for questions at this point, Mr. Richardson?
I certainly am. Thank you.
Okay, I see Councilmember Quintanilla has her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question in terms of that little strip in Portola Country Club. How many residents are we talking about in that very unique phalange that sticks out?
I can't give you exact numbers. I would doubt that it is that many. If you zoom in, you can get a better view, and I can actually take it to a satellite view, which gives you an idea of what kind of population density we're looking at. As you zoom closer in, I mean, you can do a rough justice count right there and see, 30 to 40 homes, maybe. Maybe I didn't major in math or counting for that matter, but that's the population you're looking at right there. It's not going to be that extreme. So if you lost that population, I don't want to speak without doing the actual changes. I doubt that you're going to lose that much in terms of your overall population.
Can you show us also the other little?
I sure can.
Okay.
This arm right here.
No,
this-
yes, the one up here at Castellano.
Yeah. And sometimes the reason that you see these strange little arms is because they're part of a census tract. And you can't split those census tracts. So I can't tell you for certain right now as we're talking whether this is part of a census tract, but I would bet, because you see no homes in there, that this is simply part of a census tract that can't be split up.
How interesting.
May I ask another question, Madam Mayor?
Absolutely.
So in looking at that tract where it essentially just looks like the back of the wash, does that mean that the homes that are on the south side of Castellana would be in District 2 and there's no population actually in that strip? I can just imagine that if there are residents there, that it would be in their best interest to stay in the same district as their neighbors. Am I interpreting that correctly?
You are. So this is all District 2. And if there was somebody who built their house right here, they would be in District 1, but that would not be legal. So yes, they're all going to be in District 1 here, or 2, I should say. I apologize.
Thank you for clarifying. So the phalanges are not of significant impact.
Well, may I, is there anyone else who has a question? Okay, I have one. When we look at the one that goes into kind of is in between Monterey and Chaparral, that's in the wash, isn't it? And where's
this one here?
Yeah, well, yeah. No, the one that goes up Castellana. The one that is more west, I would say.
Right there. This one?
That one. Yes. Because is that part of the golf club? I know that they tend to build golf courses in those washes and I'm just wondering, is that part of the golf course? And we're seeing nodding from Bob. So well, you can't, okay, so you can't break up a census tract.
Yes, that's the one thing that we absolutely cannot do. You can certainly break up a community if you have to, but the census tract, those are the blocks that we're working with. They sometimes look a little bit odd, but we can certainly, clearly one of the directions that we've received so far is to look at these little fingers that have gone off, right? And to the extent that we can reduce those kinds of odd incursions into, for example, the country club, this little odd finger into the wash, we will do that. If they're part of a census tract, we'll just have to come back and say, apologies, but it's part of a census tract. But the direction, I think, is clear and makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, I see none. Does that conclude your presentation or is there more?
Yes, so that's it. We have the 2 options for you. I just want to make sure, and we certainly have more conversation to engage in, including with the public. But so far, what I'm hearing is that we want to look at this finger, this incursion into the country club, and the possibility of including this area around the schools in District 2 and see what those changes would do to the demographic data for District 2. That's what I'm hearing so far. Is that accurate?
Well, we haven't really gotten into the discussion.
Yeah, and we have a couple more questions, so let's see where they take us. Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is of a procedural nature. First of all, this is a public hearing, so I know we want to hear from the public before we give opinions, but the request today is to conduct the public hearing. The recommendation is simply to receive the report So I want to make sure that we don't get in trouble here, because I heard some preferences already being expressed. Is that a no-no? I know this is part of a multi-meeting process, so should we be careful to avoid coming to conclusions about districts until the meeting in which we actually discuss our preferences, or is it okay to talk about anything we feel like?
Well,
Yes, please go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
we're at questions, and certainly we don't have any information to draw conclusions at this point. And we haven't heard from the people, so we should be at this point asking questions and accumulating knowledge to make the best decision.
Okay, so I just want to get my question answered, though. Are we, under this process, required to follow specific guidelines where we should not be expressing preferences until the final meeting where we do discuss preferences and make a decision? As I said, the recommendation is simply to receive a report. So I just want to, I know that there are specific guidelines. I just want to make sure that we follow them.
Yes, it's a very good question, right? In a typical public hearing, as you've clearly been trained well, right? We hold off on our decisions until we've heard all the public's input. This is a little bit different in that you can express, what we'll call preferences without coming to a final decision. That's kind of part of the iterative process. So for example, if between option 1 and 2, you prefer option 2 with some tweaks, there's no problem in giving that direction. The problem would be if you were to state right now, my mind is made up, I'm doing option 2, regardless of what anybody says. Yes, you do have 2 more public hearings, and we have to be careful of making decisions before the 4th hearing when we actually adopt a map. But in terms of having preferences, asking questions, asking for further tweaks, it's part of the process.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Richardson, so the area that includes Palm Desert Middle School that we were talking about right in there, please help me understand better, and perhaps even our community that might be listening in terms of defining community of interest. But when you define it, can that also, are we stating that the school has more of a community interest in District 1 versus District 2? And what if, for example, the schools are a community of interest to the whole city of Palm Desert? Can you help give some direction here?
Yeah, that's a very good question. One of the reasons that we have 4 hearings and workshops is because typically your demographer doesn't understand the nuances of the city, right? The communities of interest. What we understand is how to couple census tracts together to get where you need to get demographically, right? And so we bring a map to you that is it's just necessarily going to cut across certain communities of interest, right? And the purpose of these hearings is to then get that public input and the council's input and say, hey, you've cut a community of interest right in half. So a school area, right, specific to your question, the area surrounding the school could definitely be a community of interest, right? The map that you see before you is making no statement about whether it belongs in 1 or 2. It's simply our effort to balance population and to create a majority minority district. But right, if contiguity is important, it certainly is in the Fair Maps Act, and we can keep that community, right, this area together and still have the demographics that we're seeking for, we can include that in District 1. If you feel like it belongs in District 2, that's really your call and your direction to give. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does. It does somewhat. I just believe that our schools are important to so many of our residents, and I guess there's no easy solution here, really.
That's correct. And I think you've hit on an interesting point, and that is, how do you define community of interest? Well, it's not defined in the law, right? very easy ones are gated communities or HOAs, right? But then there are more amorphous communities of interest, right? I mean, to an extent, the entire city is a community of interest. Well, to what extent is the school district or the district boundaries a community of interest? Utility district boundaries, right? Again, it's not defined, it's for the council and the public to define what their communities of interest are and which communities might take precedence over others, right? Because there are going to be competing communities of interest as we talk through these maps. There is not going to be a perfect map. I can guarantee you that. What we're striving towards is a map that gets closest to all of the points that we're trying to hit.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. You've just underscored the challenge of doing these districts. Thank you.
It's not easy. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, I see none. And Mr. Richardson, then are we ready to open the public hearing?
Yes, let me just go back to the PowerPoint and just finish up my presentation so you know what the next steps are, if that's okay.
Right.
I'll just run through the last few slides so everybody has the benefit of what's coming next. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so what is informing these maps? Well, demographic data, staff expertise. We've worked extensively with your staff. They've been fantastic giving us guidance. And now we come to the point of public input and council input. That's what's most important, and that's what's going to happen. It's what's been happening and what will happen once we open public comment. At tonight's hearing, again, we're reviewing draft maps, getting input, and then giving direction to revise draft maps. That's going to happen, right? You often see first versions, second versions, seventh versions of maps. That's why we have a long process. Now that process, the next steps, after we receive input tonight, we're going to go back and revise draft maps as directed by the council. There will be a third public hearing where you will see map adjustments, and then we will evaluate any draft maps from the public that are submitted. They will have the opportunity to submit draft maps between this hearing and the next hearing. The public has two options for drawing and submitting their own maps for consideration. There's a paper map kit and an online mapping tool. You can access the paper kit at the city's website for redistricting. It's mappalmdesert.org. You can download it. Once you're satisfied with your hand-drawn map, you can email it or drop it off at City Hall for consideration. You can also access the online mapping tool at the same website, mappalmdesert.org. The link to the tool and video instructions are found on the right of the page. There are also printed instructions that you can download. Once you've gone through the instructions, it's a fairly intuitive process of drawing your own map online. This is your timeline. Of course, we've been through a few of these hearings. The 11th of February is the deadline for the public to submit draft maps. That's an important date to keep in mind, right? That's the deadline to get those draft maps in so that we can review them in time for the third public hearing, which is on February 24th. And then you can see the rest of the process. Our deadline is April 17th. We have some buffer built in there, the fourth public hearing, where ideally we will introduce an ordinance and the council will approve final maps. That happens on March 10th. And of course, we have the election with the new district boundaries in November. So that is the presentation. I appreciate your time. Of course, I will be here to answer any questions, and we can toggle back over to that Google tool at any time that you want to look at those maps and the overlays. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for all the graphics and toggling and all those things you did to help us. So are there any more questions before we go to the public hearing?
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Quintanilla.
Yes, I see that there is an option 3 that's listed. Is that something that we will go over now, or is that something that will be part of the public comment?
Great question. That was the option that I talked about, where we tried to fill in the area around the school and kind of make it more contiguous. That's the one that dropped the Hispanic voting age population down to 46.8%. I can show you that if you'd like. But I figured with that voting age population decrease, it probably was a non-starter.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we will now open the public hearing, and this is the opportunity for anyone in the public who would like to offer any input or ask questions. And I am looking at attendees. I see no hands at this point. Oh, one just popped up. Take that back. Two popped up. Okay. The first one is Bruce Pointer.
Bruce Pointer, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, Honorable Mayor, City Council, my name is Bruce Pointer, resident of Palm Desert. I've talked to quite a few local friends and neighbors about Palm Desert districts. They all feel well represented with the current Civic Center Core District and District 1 and District 2. None thought any further districts or divisions would be beneficial. I've attended many city council meetings in the last few years. Many times I've witnessed a resident at the podium present with an issue. Most times I watch one or more council persons approach a resident at break or after the meeting and give direct personal attention. I thought, wow, this is exactly how representation is supposed to work. These residents came from the north, east, south, and west of the city. Always one or two council members helping, sometimes all 5 at once, as it should be. I don't want north, east, central, south, and west to say, my representative individually. I want us all to say, our representatives. I'm on record as no to 5 districts. I want my city to stay united. Thank you.
The next speaker is Linda Salas.
Linda Salas, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have been fighting for 5 districts since before the 2 districts were established. And I still take issue with the fact that it appears imbalanced. There's not enough representation for the District 1, which is the at-large, correct? If that's the district that is so, we get at-large representation, then the people in those areas don't get the neighborhood kind of representation that District 2 is getting. So I always feel that the more local your representatives are, the more attention that area will get. And so I'm encouraging you to consider developing these 5 districts. I've been asking for it forever. And I'm not the only one. I may be the one that has vocalized it, but there is a growing population who really feels that they're not being heard and would like someone in their area close to them that they could approach in the event that they need some support to run for office and be available to be representing that particular neighborhood and area. So and actually having the 2 districts is a little like having segregation from the way I see it. It's separating one group against another group. So it doesn't seem to, it doesn't achieve the goal that I think districting does. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for sharing your feelings. The next person is Joan Spear.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for taking my comments and for all the work. I can see how much work has gone into creating these maps. I'm amazed when I look at the map. I'm amazed at the size of the north and east sides of Palm Desert. I mean, as you know, it's a huge area up here in the north and the east. And it just seems obvious to me that dividing into 5 districts makes sense. To have a representative who lives in my area will address the issues I'm concerned about and gives me more direct access. I am currently in the upper central north section and was looking with interest at the new District 1 possibilities. And if I were put into District 1, that would mean that I would only vote, it seems like, every 4 years, whereas people who live in District 2 vote for 2 people every 2 years. And so right now I get to vote every time and vote for one of those 4 people. So my vote counts more than if I were put in District 1. I would have no say over any of the at-large people. And that just does not seem fair to me at all. So really think about that. If we have 1 person and 1 vote, why am I voting more often than people who live in District 1? So I was kind of alarmed to think that I might be in District 1 and have no control over the voice of Palm Desert. So that's one of my biggest concerns there is that. And also, I just don't understand why there is resistance to making a motion to go directly to 5 districts. Palm Springs has done it. Other cities have done it. You've got, you have an easy look when you look at the map, an easy east side, north side, south side, central side. We're already divided. And if I run for the at-large district, I'm addressing 40,000 voters, whereas in the District 1, it's just 10,000 voters. I can't afford to run and try to address 40,000. If I were just going to run for my 1 district, I could address those 10,000 at a much lower cost. So again, it just does not seem equitable at all. So I really want to urge you to reconsider 5 districts, but I also appreciate all the hard work and efforts that have gone into creating these maps. Thank you very much.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Beer. I see Mayor Pro Tem's hand is up. Perhaps we can wait until after the public hearing.
I have a procedural question, Mayor. Can I just inquire about that? Thank you. And I apologize for interrupting the public hearing. Of course, we all want to hear from all our residents and stakeholders. I'm losing focus a little bit because we're looking at the lines and the boundaries for the existing 2 districts as mandated by the census count. And I'm hearing testimony about 5 districts, which is of course an item later in the agenda. And part of my concern, besides me losing focus on the agenda item we're supposed to be considering, is I don't want people who give testimony now to leave the meeting not knowing that it's actually going to be discussed later. So I'm just a little out of whack here.
Okay, those are great points. I know that the 5 district point can be made during this public hearing, but I understand what you're saying, and I think you make a very valid point. So let's thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Jonathan, let's go to Ed. And I have to say, I don't want to discourage people from speaking. If they spoke now, they can speak later. We certainly want to hear your voices. So let's go to Kelly Leitner.
Kelly Leitner, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, hi. Well, sort of irrelevant maybe at this point now, but my voice was also to concur with the option of going to 5 districts. So I'll hold those comments till later. I hadn't realized it was later on in the agenda, so my apologies.
Thank you so much. Okay, is there anybody else who wants to speak on this issue that we are talking about? And I see no one as I'm looking. Neve, do you see anybody, or Gloria, anyone who's waiting to speak? I see no one in the participants box requesting.
No, no one else.
Okay, thank you. Then at this point, we will close the public hearing. And this is a time then, if anybody would like to make comments, if any of the council members would like to make comments, please, this is your opportunity. Councilmember Kelly.
Yes, Mr. Richardson drew some correct inferences from questions, I think, which is that picking up just one street from a gated community probably so much flies in the face of statutory requirements for communities of interest, that we should avoid these fingers if at all possible. I am the person at our last meeting who featured the importance of preserving a district as close to minority majority as possible. I did that in the context of that being more important than how close we come to precisely 20%. But we don't want to pursue that goal with blindness toward every other criteria, which quite frankly, I think would offend most voters of all perspectives, because it just looks like a classic gerrymandering. So I will offer this consideration to be put in the mix as you do further tweaking. It strikes me that trying to minimize changes of status between District 1 and District 2 is probably a good thing, because people just began to get used to this system. People newly voted as part of District 1 in the most recent election. So I think they would find it confusing to suddenly be taken out of District 1. And that would apply to the folks just north of the schools, the middle school and Abraham Lincoln Elementary School. If people would say, what's the sense in this? That's a pretty good clue to us that we might be on a fruitless detour. And it strikes me people in that neighborhood would say, what's the sense in removing us from District 1 when we're part of a neighborhood which for the most part is still part of District 1. A similar logic would leave me not to pick up a small segment of people from the south side of 111. Option 1 picked up a small segment of people from the south side of 111. I think those folks would similarly ask, what's the sense of shifting us when everything surrounding us is part of District 2? So yes, coming as close to minority majority as possible. It's important since that was a key objective of the settlement agreement, but not at the expense of everything else.
Hey, thank you. Is that okay? Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo much of what Councilmember Kelly has said, and I know in the conversations when I was speaking to voters and canvassing that it is important to keep where we are now, but there were residents on the other side of Monterey that were saying we're sticking out on this side. We don't belong here. So I just encourage everyone to let their voices be heard. And we are looking at the maps with a different set of eyes. And so it's up to people in those communities that are right on the edge. We need to hear from you. So if you're watching now, we encourage you submit a map. And I do have another question, Mr. Richardson. When they toggle on the list, will they all just be listed as option numbers? Because I seem to recall somewhere that people were given the option to save their map with a certain name. As we get more maps, would it just show as the option number or the map name?
Yeah, so the submitted maps will not automatically transfer over to the Google tool, right? That's a separate process that will be done by our team. They will then be uploaded into that Google tool so we can see those maps and toggle back and forth.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, so you have shared with us what our timeline looks like, and I believe, if I recall correctly, is that February 11th is the next meeting. So we look forward to receiving more input. And at this time, I will entertain a motion. This is by minute motion to receive this report and conduct a public hearing.
I make a motion to receive and file this public hearing. And that's sufficient, Mayor?
I will second.
And we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Nestandi?
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla?
Aye.
Mayor Harnick?
Yes. And I
Motion
see.
passes 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Firestein.
Just as a point of clarification, that February 11th date is the date for the public to submit maps for consideration for the third public hearing.
Thank you
The third
very
public
much.
Hearing is on February 24th, and the next workshop is on February 22nd.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. Okay, we will now go back to the action calendar, and we will go back to number 16. And I just want to make sure I am correct on this. Neve is the only public hearing that we had to do at 4:30 was that number 22.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Then we will go to 16. And it looks like we have Ms. Carney.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor and members of the City Council. On December 16th, the council engaged in a study session regarding the building and timing of a 4th fire station in the northern area of Palm Desert near the university. At the study session, we determined that the next step would be to create a subcommittee, which would consist of 2 council members. So the action before you tonight is to assign 2 council members to the subcommittee.
Okay, I have are there any questions? I do have a question. I'm looking at this and I have got to believe that there is a very specific niche that the person who designs a fire station fills, so that there would be a somewhat minimal amount of need for this subcommittee. Is that kind of right?
Yes.
We're just making sure that it fits into the character of that neighborhood.
Exactly, and that the uses that you want are included. So, for example, the council may decide that they want to include an emergency operations center. So those are the kinds of decisions that we would make up front before we even embarked on the design process.
But that would be the council, not a subcommittee that would make.
Right, but the subcommittee could talk about whether they would want to even pursue those things and what type of process they wanted to use.
I see. Okay, and I see Councilmember Jonathan's hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. So what I'm hearing is that the subcommittee would address not just the appearance of the station, but also the functionality of the station, which of course would impact the cost. So the subcommittee would look at all of those issues and then come back to the full council, of course, for a recommendation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take a bold move, and I would like to recommend Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan for this committee, as well as myself. That was bold.
I would make a motion to approve that recommendation.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Pro Tem Jonathan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla. I'm sorry, Councilmember Nastandi,
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla,
Aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we will move to number 17, which is request for direction on consideration of future city council adoption of a resolution calling for a ballot measure on 5 districts. And I believe Ms. Horning is going to present.
Mayor, I'm sorry, can I just ask you, perceiving that this may be a lengthy item, would a comfort break be appropriate at this time?
Thank you. I think that is absolutely appropriate. It is 5:31. How about 5:40? Does that sound reasonable? Okay. Thank you. Okay, it is 5:40. So do we have everybody back so that we can proceed with the meeting? There we go. Okay, so we'll just go through that again. It's item number 17, request for direction on consideration of future city council adoption of a resolution calling for a ballot measure on 5 districts. And that is Ms. Horning, please.
Good evening. I'm Heather Horning, the assistant to the city manager. Tonight, I have a presentation regarding a possible council initiated ballot initiative. So hang on one second. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So as you recall, at a previous council meeting, there was a council member request to receive information on the process for a council initiated ballot measure and to have the city council discuss the consideration of a possible council initiated 5 district ballot measure for the November 2022 ballot. We'll go over both of these items tonight. Included in your staff report is a memo from the city attorney regarding the process for a council initiated ballot initiative. Some of the highlights of that memo include that council would need to adopt 3 resolutions. One of them would be calling the election. Second would be requesting the election to be considered with the statewide general election. The third would be setting important election deadlines. It is important to note that all 3 of these resolutions would need to be approved by June 2022 in order to facilitate inclusion on the November ballot. Also, it's important to note that a majority vote in favor of the ballot measure is needed for its adoption. Staff received, so staff today is requesting feedback and direction on the consideration of possible council initiated 5 district ballot measure for the 2022 election. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we have the city attorney here as well. And we're excited to hear your feedback.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, I see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have 2 questions for legal counsel, Mr. Hargreaves. So CVRA seeks to address underrepresentation of minorities, specifically Hispanics. And after this last census, it appears that Hispanics are no longer a minority. In fact, they're the largest plurality in California, outnumber whites, blacks, Asians, and every other group that's counted. So my question to you is CVRA still relevant or valid given that the numbers have shifted?
Yes. You know, and obviously it's going to depend on the jurisdiction because, I mean, the CVRA seeks to address minorities that have been historically underrepresented compared to their population. So to the extent that you still have that kind of underrepresentation vis-a-vis, you know, your population, then the CVRA is still relevant. And, you know, it depends a lot on the jurisdiction because looking at the state as a whole, it may be true, and I'm not really that familiar with the statistics at this point, that there may be a Latino majority statewide or Latino plurality, but certain in different jurisdictions that varies considerably. And so the jurisdiction where you still have issues with respect to, let's say, underrepresentation on governmental bodies, then the CVRA continues to be relevant. And quite frankly, the CVRA and the Federal Voting Rights Act were conceived and implemented in an era when that wasn't true. So they, you know, over the long run, there'll probably need to be some adjustments in the process because to some degree, it doesn't, you know, there's anomalies that can come in if, you know, if you have the kind of situation we're moving into because
right.
But I mean, we're still kind of in a transition. We're still trying to get to a point where everyone has, representation more or less proportional to their population. We haven't got there yet. So until we get there, the CVRA is going to continue to be relevant, particularly in those jurisdictions where we haven't really achieved that yet.
Right, or there'll be a new definition of protected classes and underrepresented minorities as the population shifts. But so I'm hearing you say that at least for now, CVRA has not been adjusted and is still relevant and valid. And assuming that's the case, CVRA seeks to create majority minority districts. It's my understanding that that is not possible in the area of Palm Desert outside of District 1. So does that mean that if we create 5 districts, it would not further the goals and objectives of CVRA?
Well, what the CVRA actually does, I mean, it doesn't even talk, I don't believe, about majority minority districts. It doesn't talk about ethnicity or race or any of that. What it talks about is if you have voting patterns where identified underrepresented minorities are not represented on the council in proportion to their population, then you have to go to districts. And that's why we ended up here. Now, what those districts might look like is going to depend on, the kind of process we're going through right now. So kind of lost my train of thought here.
Well, let me help you. When we went through this process last time, we took a hugely deep dive into where and how we can create a majority minority district because we were advised that was required in order to comply with CVRA. So it appears to me that since we cannot create a majority minority district in the rest of the city, that at least that goal of CVRA would not be furthered or accomplished by going to 5 districts.
I would say that, I mean, that's a conclusion you can reach. I think probably more important for us is it's the opinion of everyone that was involved in that initial process that with our 1-4 district situation we have right now, we are compliant with the CVRA. So the CVRA is not, at this point, in our opinion, pushing us forward into a different district situation. Now, there's other considerations obviously out there for going to 5 districts, but it's not the CVRA that's compelling that.
Okay, and of course there's other considerations and we're going to get to those, but I think you answered my question by stating that we are currently in compliance with CVRA, so going to 5 districts would not further the goals and objectives or meet an unmet requirement of CVRA. We're not required to go to 5 districts under CVRA. We're already in compliance at this moment.
In my opinion, that's the case. Now, there may be people, and I think that was the opinion not only of the attorneys that were representing the city, but also the attorneys that were representing plaintiffs, because everybody agreed that if we did this, we would be in compliance with CVRA, and so that's how we got where we're at.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments at this time?
There's no comments, then I would move to accept the consideration for adoption for a resolution for a ballot measure on for districts.
I appreciate that. I think we need to hear from the public first. We do have people who'd like to speak. And let's see where we are. We have, let's see, down at the bottom. Here we go. Okay, we have somebody whose phone number ends with 9479. The person whose phone number ends with 9479, has 3 minutes to speak right now. You are on mute.
How about now?
Yeah, we can hear
Sorry.
you now.
Sorry. This is Kim Floyd. I live in Palm Desert. I'm going to read a quote from the Desert Sun editorial dated November 7. And it covers my views pretty clearly. Palm Desert City Council should do its job and fix the districts, not pass the buck to voters. Letting the people decide by putting an issue on the ballot usually sounds good and sometimes makes sense, but often it's a cop-out, allowing elected officials to pass the buck instead of doing their job and making a tough decision. That's just what the Palm Desert City Council would be doing if it puts this important redistricting issue before the voters. Ironically, in service of giving voters a say, this act would be preserving an undemocratic system for years to come. Instead, the council should fix it now. End of quote. I personally became engaged in this issue of district voting about 4 years ago. My interest was not related to litigation calling for compliance with the California Voting Rights Act, but rather based on my experience that council members seemed too far removed from their constituents. As we know, our council members now live basically in South Palm Desert, or perhaps better known as Old Palm Desert. At the same time, it is clear that New Palm Desert and the future of Palm Desert is happening in the north and the east parts of our city. The communities that will experience this dynamic growth deserve locally elected representation on the city council. As the Desert Sun editorial said, quote, the council should fix it now, end quote. Now is the time for 5 district voting. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for sharing, Mr. Floyd. The next speaker is Carlos Garcia. Mr. Garcia, you have 3 minutes. Mr. Garcia, you are muted.
I unmuted myself. Okay, thank you. I'm speaking in favor of 5 districts. I think it's very important for our city to recognize that it isn't the same city it was in 1979, that it has grown dramatically and evolved dramatically. And the northern part of town is where I live. There are issues here that I know the city council listens to, but if you don't live an issue, it's different. When you hear an issue, you care about an issue, but living it is different. And I really feel it's going to be really important for the growth of our city to embrace its diversity, to embrace its growth, to really move forward, that to have 5 districts will really help us all, because we'll all have closer representation, easier access to campaigns. Because again, as someone else mentioned, campaigning in the town with 40 against 40,000 voters is a big challenge. Campaigning against 10,000 voters is much more approachable. It's much more possible. So it's less money, and really it's all about the money. So I'm just curious about how much the city council is willing to spend to make sure that we don't have representation in our local areas, because we've already spent a lot of money. The CVRA was well-intentioned act, but it's not just about race. It's also about geography. It's also about economic diversity. There are many different levels of diversity to be considered here. And I do hope that you would consider deciding to recognize that the city council needs to make a move to put 5 districts in place now. You've seen how you're just parsing angels in the head of a pin to make this District 1. 5 districts would be much simpler and clearer. It's really about geographic interests, communities of interest at the broader level. And so I really, really feel strongly about that. And I do hope you consider the first option is to go ahead and make this decision to reflect what the rest of the state is doing. Almost cities up and down the state of California are moving to multiple districts, and do that now. If shy of that, obviously putting it on the ballot is better than nothing, but because I do think it's going to be an important issue, but it's an expensive issue. It'll be a very expensive campaign, and it'd be divisive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Ricardo Loretta. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Loretta.
I didn't know, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, thank you.
Okay, Madam Mayor and City Council members, thank you for your service and thank you for letting me speak. I didn't prepare a speech. I came to this meeting tonight to learn more, and because I care about the city. I was told when we first moved to Palm Desert 18 years ago, and even though we didn't know it when we managed to buy a home in Palm Desert, that we got lucky. There weren't a lot of homes in the Coachella Valley at that time because we landed in the best managed city in the Coachella Valley. I wasn't quite sure what that meant. I didn't appreciate there were 9 different cities. But 18 years later, I've come to the conclusion that I'm very happy we're in Palm Desert because I think it is the best managed city. Under the theory of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I would want to learn a lot more about why we would make such a change as going from now 2 districts to 5, so that I could be convinced that it is a good thing. A good thing, not necessarily a special interest thing, not necessarily a moral thing, but a good thing for all the residents. And so I don't know what the process is for educating Ricardo Loretta, but I'd be willing to attend workshops and find out more about it because I'm not so convinced that 2 districts is the right solution, or 5 districts, or 3 districts, or 1 district. I really don't know. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Loretta, thank you so much. I don't see any, oh wait, a hand just popped up. Ms. Forrester, you have 3 minutes, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I recently attended the Redistricting Workshop where they were protesting for the 5 districts. When the lawsuit was first filed, I thought this was inevitable. I talked to friends and family who lived in many cities throughout California, and a lot of these cities are more than double the size of Palm Desert. Some of the things, the takeaways I took from them was, I can't vote for the person who I truly want to vote for that best represents me because they live maybe just a few blocks outside of their district. Also, it divides the city more when everybody is trying to get the funds just for their district, their pet projects, and everything that's going on in their area of the city, instead of taking a look at the whole city. In the past, I've been at the city council meetings, met with most of you at different times, talked to you. I've never felt ignored. I've always felt that you were all there for us for whatever the question is. I've also lived in different parts of Palm Desert at different times of my life here. But the gist of it is, I would say that with districts, the cities were more divisive and less unified. I would ask that we not go to 5 districts. I know that part of the settlement was we were to go to this ranked choice voting. And I studied it quite extensively. And I wish we could be one district with ranked choice voting. If we had to, that would give everybody one vote. And I really think that would bring us all more united. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Forrester, or Ms. Forrester, excuse me. Is there anyone else, any attendee who would like to speak? And I see no more hands in the participants box. Okay, so seeing none, are there any other comments or questions? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so let me, I've got a few comments. Let me start off by reading an email that we all received from a concerned resident. A lawsuit compelled Palm Desert to abandon its longstanding practice of giving every citizen the opportunity to select 5 candidates from across the city for council membership. That right to elect 5 candidates also enabled residents to hold all 5 people accountable, collectively and individually, for council decisions and actions. Today, we are hearing demands for moving to 5 districts immediately for, quote, equal representation, end quote, with the intention of giving each of us a single vote and the ability to hold only 1 member accountable. This is not enhanced democracy, but a reduction in government by the people, for the people, and of the people. Please don't rush to lead Palm Desert in this direction. That resonates with me. You know, we're so divided as a country, really divided as a country. Why would we want to further divide our own small and wonderful city? And it is a small city, just barely over 50,000. We hear from our residents, some of our residents, that it's not fair for District 2 to get to vote for 4 council members, while District 1 gets to vote for just 1. They perceive that it's better to have 4 elected officials accountable to each resident rather than just 1. And I concur. So why would we want to deprive 80% of our residents of that privilege? Our logo is Unite Palm Desert. Let's heed the wisdom of our words. If we can't go back to an at-large city because we were sued, which would allow all residents to vote for 5 council members, then let's not make matters worse by literally dividing our city in 5. So I guess I would ask Councilmember Kelly, Mayor Harnick, you asked for this matter to be put on our agenda. What am I missing? Do you disagree with my conclusions? Is there a benefit that I'm not seeing? I'm very interested to hear your comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Kelly, I see your hand up.
I don't disagree with anything you said. And I hear those sorts of observations from many residents as I travel around town for different events. Pending considering what folks have to say this evening, I do favor putting this issue on the ballot this coming November for the general election. We've seen tonight that we have a group of people who very resolutely believe that 5 districts is a good thing. And I think we will continue to hear from that group of people until something happens to bring this issue to a head. I'm certainly not prepared to entertain the idea of this council changing the voting system. because as I travel around town, I hear such a diversity of perspectives, including everything you have said, Councilmember Jonathan, including the sorts of observations that Mr. Pointer and Ms. Forrester made this evening. If I were to summarize the gravest concerns that I hear from folks about 5 districts, it boils down to this. People deeply appreciate that one of the core values of Palm Desert that has made it a positive place to live is the commitment to equally resourcing every single part of the city. Parks are intentionally dispersed throughout the city, including reservation of significant space for a new regional size park in the North Sphere. Infrastructure is similarly maintained throughout the city. When we extended the city to include the Palm Desert Country Club to the east, Palm Desert embarked upon a multi-year, multi-million-dollar commitment to improve the infrastructure in that area, including flood control that would match previously installed flood control in other parts of the city. That didn't happen because there were council members from the east of the city. It happened because it's been a core value of this city to equally resource every single part of the city. I hear concern expressed that a system that inherently makes elected council members most accountable to a discrete geographic area could potentially, in the long term, undermine that commitment. But ultimately, how we are chosen, to my way of thinking, is an issue that belongs to the voters. The issue Mr. Floyd raised and the Desert Sun raised, for me, amounts to this. I concur. Essential questions about the operation of government should not be punted to the people. They elected us to deal with those. I wouldn't concur in punting just because something's controversial. I didn't suggest a ballot measure to deal with short-term rentals or drive-through restaurants or CV Link or any other issue just because it was controversial. But the question of how we are selected more properly belongs to the voters. I see a basis for distinction. Who I talk to isn't necessarily a scientific sampling of the population. Who shows up at council meetings certainly is not a scientific sampling of the population, because folks who love things just the way they are aren't watching council agendas and showing up just to say, please, please, please keep things just the way they are. So the best way to find out how the majority of voters feel about this is to place it on the ballot. And frankly, I am not open to thinking about attempting to rush and put it on the June ballot. My goal is to engage as many people as possible, to educate and inform as many people as possible. And that's only accomplished in the general election. Let's do that. Let's find out how the majority feel after considering all of these perspectives and go from there.
Councilmember Nastandi.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of points. I appreciate the comments of Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan. It really resonates with me, and Councilmember Kelly, so do your comments. What gives me pause to have concern is I believe the city of Palm Desert, I believe it has the potential to divide our city if we go to 5 districts, because we're only a population of 50,000. And when I think of our state assemblyman, our state senator, our congressman who represents us residents in the city of Palm Desert, that one person is representing several 100,000 people, not just the city of Palm Desert. Yet we allow one person, I shouldn't say we allow, it's the Constitution. We have one person representing us out of several 100,000 people compared to our city of 50,000. There's no comparison in terms of representation. And I believe all 5 of us can do a great job, or whoever holds these 5 seats, in representing the whole city. My concern is it will divide the city, balkanize it, for lack of a better word. And that's my concern. However, I do trust the voters to make the right decision, ultimately what they feel is best. My concern there is, though, we could potentially have outside interests that might not necessarily put the interest of the city of Palm Desert first. And they could have unlimited resources and money to do mail pieces and other advertising that could potentially confuse the voter, who many of which are working full-time, living busy lives. They might glance at a mail piece and there's nobody there to check the facts if it's true or not. And so that's my one concern. I haven't made a decision. I just want to throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Mayor. I've clearly been observing this with a lot of interest and have been kind of waiting for this moment to have the opportunity to speak as a council member and also as part of how we got here. And I've heard a lot of points from the community. These are not points that I have not heard before, but I'll first start with the comment that Councilmember Nastandi made that was wonderful. And you mentioned that it's very important to be able to know the information that's coming in. That's why it makes more sense to have a dedicated person in your district instead of 12 people potentially running for different parts of the city that you will have to then filter through. So I understand that it can be overwhelming when we get so many mailers, and I think it actually simplifies it for the voters to find somebody that represents their values locally. That's the reason why we have districts for school boards, for the water district. So this is really no different. This would actually bring us closer to compliance with the way it's done in other places. I think that I would like to bring in that at the invocation, Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan mentioned the words of Martin Luther King about us being in the same boat. That may have been true in his context, but I think right now we're in the same storm. We're not in the same boat. Depending on where you live and what your resources are, you may be cruising comfortably through this storm in a boat that's bigger than others. And some of us have life rafts and are advocating for those that have been struggling the same. So we're not only talking about the demographics and in terms of ethnicity, but we're talking about economic interests and the way of shaping the way that Palm Desert grows. It's evident, as was mentioned tonight, that the interest of Southern Palm Desert or historic Palm Desert frequently talk about the character and preserving the charm or character, as said. But what does that mean about the North Sphere? Who on this council is sitting here representing, guiding what that vision and goal will be for that North Sphere as it grows? That's why it's so important to have someone on board now to give that input for that large regional park, because that's going to be their access point. I've had conversations with people and said, you know, in an emergency, I want to be able to reach out to my neighbors. Well, that's easier to find your local council person in an emergency. If we had some catastrophic emergency and we had no ability to connect, and we had all cell phones, communication was down entirely, and our city manager would have to go give us notice, say there is a meeting, here's a paper notification, emergency meeting. would he be able to assess, how quickly would he be able to assess the damage to the entire city? If he had to go from City Hall to each of our 5 homes, how long would it take? If you're in a car, that'll be about 22 minutes because I mapped it out. 45 minutes on a bicycle, since I know there's cyclists on the council. And if you had to walk, Mr. Heilman, that would only take you about an hour and 15 minutes. However, if somebody from the North Sphere had to walk to City Hall to report their crisis, it would take them an hour and a half to walk there. So we're talking about the vast differences of the different parts of the city and how those people are engaging with what democracy looks like for them. I think that the eagerness to protect the status quo shows that the people in Southern Palm Desert are focusing on they get to be the ones to drive the change. They get to be the ones that drive the vision. But in reality, it's not about us. We need to remove the ego from it because the city runs because of a city manager that we have selected and the staff. The staff is the lifeblood. If there's great vision, it's because staff puts it forward. We are here to give the voice to the people, but it's the staff that makes a lot of things work. And I am concerned, as was mentioned, that perhaps the funding would come from outside interests, but I think it actually speaks to the contrary. I think that this council is so concerned with maintaining the status quo that when the state of California said that there is now a 4,700 campaign donation limit, that my peers, I was the lone vote, said, no, we're not going to have a limit at all. So I think it speaks more about how our current council is looking at their finances for future campaigns and not quite so interested in the way that things need to be to represent others. With the $4,700 limit, 2 voters could have financed, two donors could have financed my whole entire campaign. I think that that is very worrisome that we were seeing an inability to determine that different parts of the city have different interests and different goals. I think that this is a procedural obfuscation of the intent of CVRA. Yes, we settled so that we could move it forward, but I encourage everyone to watch the new mayors and new council members session. They have one about equity and diversion, and it specifically talks about things like this as procedural obfuscation to prevent the implementation of equity. And it may be very well-meaning to say our city is wonderful. And I've heard people say, let's make Palm Desert great again, but I am telling you that we can be even greater. And that means that we get to hear from different people. And I hear from people that are telling me, I can speak to you in my native language and be sure there is not a misunderstanding because I have called City Hall and I'm not able to get through. That is why this is important. I know we have a lot of different ways of viewing things. I think that overall, we still are moving towards a general good direction. We're not pulling apart in different ways. We're just saying different people deserve a voice. I don't think that it's something that we need to pass on to the voters. I think that that is why we were elected to make that decision. But if we can't make that decision from within and save the economic interests of the city, then it does need to go to a vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, it's a tough one, but I do think very candidly that some of the offensive comments that were made are a harbinger of what would happen if we were in 5 districts. Historically, this city didn't end up being one of the best and best managed cities in the Coachella Valley by accident. It's because 5 council members, whoever they were, worked together for the best of the entire city and all its residents. We're not so big that any of us aren't familiar with literally every corner of our city. And the comments that were made, I'm fearful that's where we're going to end up with 5 districts. You know, just instead of working together and being united and being respectful and cooperative with one another, we're going to be literally divided. I understand that this is an issue that some feel should be decided by the voters. It's really a question of who takes that initiative. We're not under a compulsion to be the ones that introduce this measure on the ballot. If there's enough interest amongst the voters this state allows for them to directly place a measure on the ballot. Because it is so clear to me that moving to 5 districts would be so damaging for the city and more importantly for its residents, I would oppose our council taking that initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that it's more of an alarmist response to say that someone speaking their truth is a harbinger of terrible things to come. And that just speaks to the fear of diverse thought and perhaps the fear of being ousted by 60% with a humble, dare I say, humble majority there. And that is the true change that is happening, and people are responding well. And I am sorry if it does not sit well with folks, and I'm sorry if I said things that irked with truth, but we can go back and look at the minutes. I still am so perplexed as to how, when the state said we needed to make a decision about campaign limits, we said, no, how about we're not going to have that? And that to me is very concerning. That to me is very, very concerning, because whose interests are people protecting? Whose interest? Because I watch a lot, and when people talk about, oh, Palm Desert, is it the businesses or is it the people? Whose interests are we serving? We always look at all of the resources that are going to restoring, renovating, keeping up with Southern Palm Desert and with 111, but the economic reports indicate that the northern sphere is actually the larger economic driver right now. And again, we need someone from there to be able to advocate. And the current system of saying, no, we're fine, is continuing to show the unwillingness to hear someone else.
Councilmember Kelly.
I want to just quickly say that the discussion about that contribution limit included some very important considerations based on equity, such as making sure PACs did not end up with outsized influence, but we don't want to repeat that conversation. There was a proposed motion before, which I don't think received a second. I would like to offer as a possible motion that we direct staff to prepare draft resolutions of the sort described in the staff report, and to bring those back to council. This motion obviously isn't final action at the point in time the draft motions are brought back. All of us will have the opportunity to make a final decision about moving forward. But I think enough reasons for moving forward have been given to justify the investment of staff time. So the motion is to direct staff to prepare drafts of the motions described in the staff report and to bring those back to council.
I second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, so I'd like to make a few comments. And we did get into some what I felt were accusatory tones. And that's not where we need to be. We need to discuss honestly and openly. And we heard people speaking. We heard people say, we heard people read from the newspaper. We heard people talk about feelings. We heard people say they wanted more information. We had heard people say they didn't want to divide their community. And then the council members made some very good points. I think when I look at Palm Desert, and I've been here a long time, we have seen the resources of this city used in a very, very prudent fashion. And they've been used for everybody equally and well. And I think the Palm Desert Country Club was a great example of that. We've worked hard to create great parks throughout our city, to put education where it needs to be, to listen to everyone, to put storm drains where they needed to be, to keep pavement in a PCI that we're proud of. So some of the people who I heard speak about I'm not being represented, I first met when they wanted to meet with me about an issue because I was ready and I was available. And the way I got elected was walking door to door. And that included around this entire city. Because it may be easier just to represent a few people, but is it best? And is it best knowing what all the people need so that we can balance the needs? And at this point, given what we've heard, I would like to hear what staff comes back with. I would like to provide more information to the community. And I think we need, as Councilmember Kelly said, this is not the final, but let's see what else we have to learn. There were some great points made today and we need to look at them. So I call for a vote now. I call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Nay?
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi,
No.
Councilmember Quintanilla,
Yay.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move to number 18. Request for direction regarding Portola Avenue I-10 interchange improvements, project number 637-02. And I believe that is Mr. Firestein or Mr. Bowman.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Mr. Firestein and I are here to answer questions. We've prepared a staff report with several recommendations, requests for staff direction concerning the Portola I-10 interchange project. The last time we talked about this project with the council was during the fiscal year 21-22 budget development process. And council received an update on the project, including the most recent cost estimates for its construction. The project, as council would recall, has increased substantially in cost from approximately 72 million in 2008 to over 114 million with the current construction cost estimate. The staff report contains a lot of details. We are certainly here to answer questions, but what staff is requesting direction on is what to do with the funding that the city has set aside for the project, two funding sources, bond funds that are on deposit with CVAG, as well as 5 million in Measure A funds that the city has been setting aside for contribution to the project. The city staff have pursued funding opportunities such as federal earmarks since the budget was approved, but those efforts have not borne fruit on any new funding. We are keeping an eye on the flow of federal funds to California from the recently adopted transportation bill. At this time, we do not know yet what the rules may be, what the set-asides may be, and we are staying in touch with the county and other agencies. So to close, we are recommending and requesting direction for this project, and we're here to answer your questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bowman. Okay, I see Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan's hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions. Number one, how did CVAG manage to spend $1.2 million on a project that never got off the ground?
Mr. Jonathan, you're referring to 1.2 million for this project?
Yes, the staff report indicates that out of the 15 million we gave them, they've spent 1.2 million, and we would only get back 13.8.
Mr. Firestein can add to my comment, but I believe that's for all of the project costs incurred to date, which is the design effort.
That's a lot of design. I hope we audit that number if we end up asking for our money back. My other question to you, and it's a quick one, but it may be difficult to answer. If we abandon the project, is it unrealistic to think that it might be resurrected at some point in the future? I mean, is this a do or die kind of thing?
Staff is recommending that the plans which are nearing completion be allowed to be completed. And that would position the project to be what we call shovel ready for funding opportunities in the future. So the project would be placed in stasis, my word, and it would be awaiting any potential new funding for the project. Mr. Firestein, perhaps I've missed something.
What I would add to Mr. Bowman's comments is that the project is not competitive right now within the CVAG transportation prioritization system. It is not the highest ranked interchange project, and there are many other projects that are seeking funding that rank higher than this one. And even when we look at the potential funding that may be coming down the pipeline, it's very unlikely that it will be directed towards this project. And it's with that staff is recommending that we look at repurposing those monies that have been put into the project for other purposes. That would include both the Measure A monies as well as those bond funds.
But in conjunction with completing the plans so that it is shovel ready, so that if policy changes and funding becomes available, we'd be in a position to apply for it. Did I get that right?
You did, yes.
Okay, excellent.
Are there any other questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I will move to approve, but I'm shedding tears.
I'll second the motion.
Because it would be great if Scranton allowed Palm Desert to get ahead of congestion problems instead of waiting for them to happen. But the world is what it is.
And you never know, Councilmember Kelly, maybe we'll get a potload of money from the federal government at some point to help us.
They have mentioned having a lot of extra money laying around, so.
That's right.
Yeah. So we do make that point. We have a motion in a second, and we do make the point of getting ahead of the issue rather than trying to build our way out of it later. We make that point at RCTC, and we made it in front of the California Transportation Commission the other day. But I call for the vote with the same tier.
Mayor, could I just get clarification on the motion? It's to retrieve the unused funds from CVAG, to complete the design, and then to do what with the remaining funds? What's I didn't understand the motion in that regard.
I'm moving the precise minute motion proposed by staff, which does not speak to the ultimate use of the funds clawed back.
Mr. Firestein can add to this, but I believe that through the budgeting process, that staff would be recommending reuse of the funds.
Thank you.
Can we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan?
Yeah, aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Nistandi?
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla?
Aye.
Mayor Harnick?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, we will now go to, which one are we on? Oh, we're back to public hearings. And we are at 19, which is a resolution to approve a historic district designation for Sandpiper condominiums Circle 2, located on El Paseo. And who will be presenting?
I will be Mayor Eric
Okay.
Seha, Deputy Director for Development Services. Tonight, we did do a public hearing notice for this item. However, we received a memo from staff requesting continuance to February 10th to allow us to prepare the right resolution for this. We do ask that you open the public hearing if there's any public testimony, but continue this item to February 10th.
Could we do that with the two items together?
I was just going to ask, are we going to be continuing item number 20 as well?
That is correct.
So perhaps we can, would it be too messy to do that? I'll ask our attorney.
We could have a motion to do both at the same time, as long as everyone clearly understands what they're voting on and,
Okay.
you know, the record's clear.
Okay. And we can return and take them separately if needed, even though we have opened them together. Okay. So we don't have any questions. We are going to continue it. So at this point, we will open the public comment for public hearing for any comment. And I don't see any hands up, so we will leave that open for number 19 and number 20.
And I will move to continue to the next council meeting on the 10th.
And I second.
Great. Can we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Nastambi,
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla,
Aye.
Mayor Harnick.
Yes.
Motion passes for item 19 and 20, 5-0 unanimous vote.
Thank you so much. We'll go to 21, ordinance number 1375, continued item for consideration of approval to the City Council for zoning ordinance amendment 21-0002 to amend the Palm Desert Municipal Code, Chapter 25, modifying Section 25.60.60, public hearing and public notice, adding Section 25.60.160, community engagement, and Chapter 5, Section 5.11, disclosures upon transfers of residential property, regulating the public engagement process, continued from our meeting of January 13th, 2022. And I would imagine, do we have Ms. Lua?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. Rosie Lua, Principal Planner. The item before you is the community engagement, and these are ordinances, as you stated, from January 13th.
We did have a full report at
Yes.
the last meeting, so I wonder if we get, and we just had one request to change, so I wonder if we can just focus in on that.
Yes, I would ask that we do address the change that was requested, and then we can go from there.
Yes, Madam Mayor. The item that we were specifically looking at was subsection 5 of section 25.60160, which was specifically on the community engagement. And that read, the Director of Development Services may require the developer to provide additional plans or studies, including but not limited to line of sights, photometric plans, massing studies, three-dimensional plans, and any other studies that may be deemed relevant for the project's engagement with the public. Staff reviewed the subsection 5 and provided an analysis. So we looked at revising and or removing this section. And after review, staff revised the proposed ordinance removing the above stated section. And I'll walk you through our analysis. So by removing this section, it still allows staff to continue the practice of recommending the relevant plan studies to respond to the residents' concerns. So it puts the responsibility on the developer to utilize these various plans or studies as part of their process to engage with the public. And also removing subsection 5 still continues to meet
the intent of the community engagement that was discussed at the July City Council meeting. So developers were to engage with residents early in the process and respond to concerns, as well as staff to facilitate the information and report back to the commission and City Council. So the new ordinance is revised, removing that section number 5. No other ordinances were affected by it as part of removing this section here. So developers are required still to provide a community engagement plan for projects 5 acres or more. It's part of the application submittal. That engagement plan must provide a method of communication with the public, provide any written publications to staff, have 1 meeting as part of the public requirement, provide written responses to staff for each public concern, provide notification for these meetings for properties within the 1,000 foot project area, and staff, again, is to report back to the approving bodies through a staff report. And that concludes my presentation, and it's a recommendation to adopt the ordinance. And again, there are 3 ordinances. Number 1 is section 25.60, which is public hearing and public notice, the community engagement, which is section 25.6010, and adding section 5.11, which is the disclosure upon transfer of residential property. And I'm here
Okay,
for any
thank you very
questions.
much. Now, before we go to a public hearing, are there any questions at all? This is a second reading with just the changes that were noted by Ms. Lua. Okay, I'll open the public hearing and we'll see if there's anybody who would like and I see no one, so I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion unless there's any additional discussion.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
I will second the motion.
Thank you. May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi?
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla?
Aye.
Mayor Harnick?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And we will move to 23, which is another public hearing. Consideration of an amendment to the specific plan, precise plan, tentative track map, and the disposition and development agreement for Desert Surf, a resort development inclusive of a 5.5 acre surf lagoon and surf center facility, a 4-story 92-room hotel, and 83 residential units on a vacant 17.69 acre site, and an addendum of the environmental impact report for the Desert Surf project located on the west side of the Desert Willow Drive. Okay, and is that Eric Seha?
Yes, good evening again, Mayor, and members of the City Council. Eric Seha, Deputy Director for Development Services. Tonight, myself and Principal Planner Rosie Lua will be presenting the amendments to the Desert Surf project. Get the next slide. To reiterate the project, it is at Desert Willow Golf Resort. It is shown there on the right, just south of the Desert Willow clubhouse. It encompasses a vacant 14-acre site along with 3 acres of city-owned property that's currently improved with parking improvements for Desert Willow. There's also the project site E that allows for off-site overflow parking further down south towards Country Club. Next slide. To give you some background, the City Council did approve a number of entitlement applications for Desert Surf in 2019, including a disposition and development agreement, and certified the environmental impact report for this proposal. Today is an amendment to those entitlements to address changes in the project, as well as changes to the disposition and development agreement, and it includes an addendum to that EIR. This project has gone before the Architectural Review Commission, and there was one public comment expressed some concerns with the water assessment. But ultimately, the Architectural Review Commission did recommend approval of this proposal. The Planning Commission is also recommending approval of this project to the City Council. And at that meeting, there was one public comment in support of the project. We wanted to highlight and give you a comparison of the project from what was approved in 2019, shown on this slide under current entitlements versus what is being proposed today in 2022 under the amended applications. We broke it down by use type, showing that there's no changes to the surf lagoon itself, but the surf center has reduced by about 7,300 square feet. The hotel has been much more focused. It's been reduced down to 92 hotel room keys, and the villas have actually been increased to 83 total villa units. There's also been changes in the requirements to the hotel quality. We've actually increased their standard for the proposed hotel to operate at a minimum AAA 4-diamond hotel. And there's also been an increase in the FF&E, the finishes for the hotel itself, an increase of about $1,500. There's no changes in the rest of the project, but we did want to note that because of the changes that Rosie will go through on the hotel and its podium, that there's been an increase of total parking stalls of about 101 new spaces for parking. I'll come back and present the disposition development agreement later on in this presentation, but for now, I'll turn it over to our principal planner, Rosie.
Thank you. So one of the entitlements is the amendment to the specific plan. And the specific plan has three main components: land uses, development standards for setbacks and heights, and design guidelines. So the main changes for the land uses were only to reduce the minimum planning area landscaping for open space, pool, and recreational from 25% to 20%. No other major land use changes occurred in this land use section of the specific plan. For development standards, the proposed changes included building height increases. So the building height is 50 feet, and the request is to add additional 10 feet just for parapets, towers, and any similar elements, and additional 15 feet from the 50 just to cover roof stairwells or elevators. Setbacks for stack flats, that's a new product that was introduced. So there is development standards for the front yard and front, rear, and side yards, the indoor-outdoor music events. The 2019 approved specific plan stated Friday through Sunday for those events, and the request today is for those events to take place 7 days a week. There was also a request for a change for the number of surfers from a maximum of 75 occupants to 70 occupants. There were no design change guidelines for any of the architecture, the landscape, lighting, or signage. Here, I'll walk you through the precise plan. So this is the actual project that's being proposed. The surf lagoon remains to be at 5.5 acres. There is a control lifeguard of 429 square feet, a beach area, a boardwalk surrounding the lagoon, and support facilities here at the tail end for maintenance. The surf center itself is 7,263 square feet. There is a clubhouse, a little under 2,000 square feet, a play area, a pickleball area, a pump track as an amenity, and then pools throughout. There is one hotel, 92 rooms. It has a restaurant, bar, spa, fitness center, some flex area, as well as a second-story amenity deck. There are 83 residential units, 50 of the stack flats here and here at the east and west, as well as 33 villas that surround the lagoon. The building architecture style is desert modern. There is a prominent feature at the entrance with a wave portico. The elements here above the 50 feet is what is parapets, as well as any tower elements to balance the site architecturally. All of the elements that you see here in terms of stone, stucco, metal features are all resonated throughout the site. This will illustrate that second story deck feature. as well as the podium feature. And this is where the parking is integrated into the building. So you'll see that the first story and the second story are parking. And the first story deck is, the second story deck is here, which is illustrated here in this section. And the first story hotel lobby, restaurant, and flex spaces are on the first floor. Again, this is the east elevation, the south elevation. The elements with varying roof lines and breaking of planes and the architectural elements resonate throughout the four-sided architecture. This is the surf center, which continues at waif in that roof line. And again, those elements with stone, metal, stucco, as well as other earthly elements resonate throughout. The surf center includes the rental portion of the project where you can check in, get your board, your wetsuit, your lockers. There is some flex space and some retail area. There is a lounge area as well. But this is the surf center that's directly next to the hotel. This is the four-sided architecture. As you can see, the wave does continue on. So those elements are part of the prominence of the architecture that's resonated here throughout the project. And this height here is 26 feet. The building architecture for the surf lagoon, it's small, but it's still prominent in its architecture. The maintenance buildings have a lower profile, and they're at the tail end of this surf lagoon. These are the stack flats that have been introduced. There's 50 of them. And again, this is to the west and to the tail end east of the project. They are 3 stories high, and there is a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom counts, as well as about 7 4-bedrooms. The first story includes the garage. Then we go up in elevations with the various suites. And as you can see, there are the mixture of the 3s and 4 bedrooms are throughout the stack flats. The villas, these are the ones that are surrounding the lagoon. There's mixtures of 4-bedroom counts and some of them that have the outdoor deck, and that is at the top here, the top level. And these are 2-story in height. First floor includes the garage. And as you can see, there are bedrooms in the first story. The second story as well has the master bedrooms, as well as the great rooms, and then the roof deck, all overlooking the lagoon. This is the architecture for those villas. Again, those same materials resonate throughout with siding, stuccos, the roof elements that create the varying heights. This is the clubhouse. The architecture here has the stone and stucco, as well as those varying roof lines. And this clubhouse includes a great room, a kitchen, and then the bathroom facilities. The landscape plan includes trees and shrubs that are low water usage, as well as some drought tolerant resistant planting. As you can see here, this is the entrance. The entrance has palms, as well as shrubs that have varying heights and colors. The landscape has also been integrated into the building of the hotel. So the lobby section of the hotel has greenery, trees, as well as in its exteriors. This is the hardscape as well as the planting for the hotel area. As you can see that we've got the palm trees, there's a variety of palm trees and accent trees. And so we're just seeing the varying symbols for those tree species. And this is the shrubbery, so they're spaced. We've got, just very desert-like tree palette as well as shrubbery. The shrubbery has seasonal effects, so there will be color throughout the varying seasons, and also a mixture of the various aloe veras with, the large shrubs as well as smaller shrubs and carpet shrubs. This is the area of the residential portion where we have a clubhouse. We've got the kids play area as well as a lawn. And as you can see throughout, there is, a variation of trees as well as shrubbery. I wanted to show this one to just have a zoom in of the pickle court as well as the pump track. And the applicant will go in more detail in these landscape plans as well as the architecture to show you what those look like. There is also a proposal for a tentative tract map. This is a subdivision of the property. All residential units are ownership units. And the surf lagoon and the hotel also have their own parcel. As far as CEQA, there is a certified environmental impact report that was adopted in 2019. There was an addendum provided. That addendum was reviewed for any changes to the specific plan and for the proposed plan. We compared the uses, and the current uses proposed in the project was found to have less than significant impacts. They also provided a water supply assessment. I have here a table. So the table shows the factors and the rates that the applicant used. So for the surf lagoon water demand, there is an evaporation rate that was factored into that water assessment. For desert surf, they used 16.4 million gallons. That is twice the amount of what would be required by CBWD. And so this is just an illustration of how conservative the project analyzed their numbers for water demand. In 2019, the gross water demand was 165.121 acre feet per year, and the net water demand resulted in 58.46 with turf removal and replacement of the desert landscaping. The water supply assessment we received in 2021, which included an assessment of the current project that's been proposed, had a demand of 114.35 acre feet per year, which netted in the water demand of 7.6 with the turf removal. In perspective, the 7.6 is equivalent to an annual demand of 58 residential units. And just wanted to go over the turf removal program, which was presented in the original project. The removal is to include 1 million square feet of turf within the Desert Willow Golf Course, and it is to be replaced with drought-tolerant planting materials and low water usage irrigation systems. And I will turn it over to Eric Ceja.
Okay, so along with the project changes, there's also some changes to the disposition and development agreement that was approved in 2019. We restate and revise this agreement to acknowledge that the land sale to transact this property and also to recognize the changes in the project scope. There's also an acquisition for public improvements. We'll get into some of that, but it's shown here, and also a reimbursement agreement for transit occupancy tax. And we want to also go through what's listed in the DDA for the schedule of performance. Get the next slide. All right, so the acquisition agreement, which is part of the DDA here, shows that the city would be using $20 million in bond proceeds to support the construction of 473 public parking spaces for the Desert Willow Golf Resort. These are again former redevelopment agency bond proceeds for project area 2 and 3. And the payment is contingent on a number of factors, including city inspections and acceptance of these improvements, project milestones that the developer has to meet, and a city look back that allows us that once the project's complete, the actual construction costs are submitted back to the city. We make sure that the money that was identified to be spent on this project is spent. And if it isn't, there's a reimbursement back to the city based on that difference. Look at the next slide. So here are some of the project milestones for that $20 million. It's shown based on the public parking that's being constructed, the surf lagoon and center that's under construction, the residential units and the hotel, and a list of various phases and progresses they need to be in order for them to start drawing down from that 20 million. So it shows there what it takes to get the first 5 million down to what it takes to get to the last 2 million. And that includes 100% completion of the project and a certificate of occupancies for all the residential units, as well as the city's ability to look back at those actual construction costs. Get the next slide. The transit occupancy tax reimbursement is for up to $16.1 million over 20 years of this project. It's broken down based on the hotel at 40% reimbursement and 60% reimbursement for the villas. That's because in the pro forma that was submitted to us, it is shown that the villas are anticipated to generate a higher average daily rate for their rental. And in order to encourage or incentivize that those villas are included as part of the rental pool, there's a higher reimbursement rate for them. This also requires that they develop and maintain a AAA 4-diamond hotel brand. And if there's a lapse in any of that status, their reimbursement can fall to 20%. And after 9 months, if they're not able to remedy that 4-diamond rating, their reimbursement falls to 0. Again, this amount was determined through a review of the project pro forma and the city consultants. It shows that there is a feasibility gap for this project and the hotel and villa development. And over the 20-year lifespan of generating transit occupancy tax and additional taxes for sales and properties, we're anticipating a city revenue of $42.5 million. However, again, then we're also reimbursing 16 million of that. So over that 20-year lifespan, the city expects to collect about $26 million from this project. Get the next slide. So this is all contingent again on the schedule of performance that's listed in the DDA that requires submittal of construction drawings by the end of March, approval of a rough grading plan by the end of April. Those contracts for construction have to be submitted to the city, and then close of escrow at the end of October. Construction is anticipated to take 24 months, and staff would be ensuring and doing its part to make sure that there's adequate inspections, grading permits that are being issued, and a number of agreements that have to come into place for that construction project. So on our last slide here is a summary of our recommendation. It is that we recommend that you adopt the changes to the project and the applications for the planning entitlements listed above, but then also by minute motion that you approve the restated and revised DDA and allow these other items to take place. Myself and Rosie are here to answer any questions you may have. The project applicant and their consultants are also here should you have any questions.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so let's start. Does anyone have any questions of staff or of the development team? Okay, Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Mayor. I still am wondering, forward thinking, when we look at all of the environmental concerns, yes, we are looking at how much water is being removed by, water use is being removed by the turf, but what is the plan should something happen where the governor restricts water access? Should we get to a severe drought? What could happen with this project in the future? I just have concerns about whether this is something that could evolve into something else in the future. What are contingencies should there be severe water restrictions on the impact on a project of this size?
I think we can let the applicant answer that question. From the city's perspective, what we've done to try to ensure compliance with the reduction of the turf is actually included a deal point with the Desert Surf folks that the city will manage the project itself to ensure that the turf mitigation takes place down the road. They are well under the current project limits that they would have to hit for this project under CEQA. I think your question about the backup plan really needs to be answered by the applicant.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I'm happy to tackle that. Councilmember Quintanilla, thank you for the question. And obviously water is a critical issue here. And the answer to your question, should there be reductions in water supplies? We have a couple of things that we can help ourselves along with, if you will. Number one, the assumption in the documents here is that we will use 24 million gallons of water. That comes out roughly a third from filling the lagoon, roughly a third from evaporation, and roughly a third from an annual drainage. So the first and most important thing we can do is we don't anticipate draining the lagoon on an annual basis. Other lagoons of our size and scope have really been able to go 2-3 years. Some haven't been drained yet. So there is an assumption right there that our water use is going to drop dramatically relative to what we've already presented to you. Secondarily, the waves are basically conditioned on a certain depth, if you will. And it is possible to run the lagoon at a slightly lower depth. Not a lot, but a 3-inch drop, for example, in a 5.5 acre body of water is a pretty significant amount of water. And we can continue to run waves through a situation like that. So those are really the ways that we would address something like that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before we open the public hearing? Okay, I have a few others, but they are for the applicants. So I think we'll wait until we open the public hearing and have discussion. So we'll open the public hearing at this time. And is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this issue? And I see no one. Wait, take that back. Miss Gonda, you have 3 minutes, please.
Hi, good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Kristen Gonda. I'm a resident of Palm Desert. I'm also the 2021 Riverside County Teacher of the Year and founder of the East Valley Board Riders at Desert Mirage High School. And I want to speak tonight on behalf of myself and my high school students. We are offering enthusiastic support for the Desert Surf Project, considering that this is going to reach an untapped audience. Surfing is a new option, and it's not a current option for recreation in Palm Desert. So the benefits to our residents, as well as welcoming new visitors to our community, is it's kind of mind-boggling at the potential that's offered here. But more importantly is that we are bringing in a business here that truly believes in giving back to their community. I can speak firsthand because of the support that they've given to the high school surfers. It's been unbelievable. It's their support for our club has been so much that we've been able to provide this service to my students that I never thought was possible. And it all is really because of their belief in sharing the stoke of surfing. They've donated equipment to our club. They've even coordinated surf trips for my surf club, which I never would have been able to provide for my students in the capacity that they did. So I just really wanted you to know, and I wanted to speak to the character of Desert Wave Ventures and what they are bringing to our community. I think that your approval of this project in welcoming this business to Palm Desert is truly going to benefit us because they have their priorities in the right place. So thank you.
Thank you and congratulations on your award, your accolades, and you look so young to be Teacher of the Year. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay. Oh, yeah, we do. John, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I would like to tag along with the previous comments. I've been a Palm Desert resident since 1983, and in that time, I've been a business owner, a volunteer in the search and rescue. And I received a seat on the architecture review at one time, but I wasn't able to take it because I didn't live within the city limits. I lived in Coia Hills. But I've been an enthusiastic supporter of Palm Desert my entire time here. And as a septuagenarian surfer, I am really looking forward to this thing. And I speak on the behalf of a lot of other of us in the 70+ surfer categories that grew up surfing in Southern California back in the 60s. And, you know, I continue to do it today, only, you know, I have to fund these trips to Central America because I've lost my enthusiasm for cold water and crowds. And the thought of having something like this in my zip code is so exciting for me. And if you look at the other wave parks around the country, you can see the impact that they have in their communities. I think this is, pun intended, the wave of the future. This is the experiential resort destination, if you will. And I think it's to Palm Desert's credit that they are on the cutting edge of this. And I support this project wholeheartedly. And thank you very much for allowing me to comment.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? And Ms. Christ, I see your hand up.
Madam Mayor, if the council has specific questions about the design or would like to hear our presentation, I realize you've had a long night. You may prefer to simply ask questions. Bruce Greenfield, our architect, is here, as well as Doug, obviously, and the other members of our team. If you would like us to make a formal presentation, we are glad to pass if you would prefer not.
Well, we are in the public hearing at this point. So, and I haven't done one of these in so long. Did we close the public hearing and then hear from the applicants for their presentation? That's a question for our attorney.
You could, I mean, it's really up to the council. If you are going to have a presentation from the applicant, I would leave the public hearing open while that presentation goes
Okay,
forward.
here's my feeling. This is a big project. And even though I know we are all, it has been a long meeting, I think we should be able to hear, I think it's important that we hear the presentation.
Then if we could go ahead, is it possible for Bruce Greenfield to share his screen? And Doug will be starting.
All right. Are you ready?
Is everybody ready? I think we are. We're so ready.
Okay. Yeah, you're past ready. All right. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council members, esteemed City Manager, and terrific staff. My name is Doug Sherris. I'm a principal with Desert Wave Ventures. First, I want to thank the City Council, the City Manager, the staff, and your outside attorneys for all their hard work on this project, especially over the last few weeks, as we've pushed to finalize the development agreement and get ready for this hearing. We're very excited to be in front of you tonight. We hope you share these feelings. Tonight, we hope to conclude roughly 4 years of collaborative efforts, and despite the curveball thrown at us all by the COVID pandemic, bring forward a project that is better and more compelling than ever. Since we last stood in front of the council, there have been many improvements to the project, which our team will go through in just a minute. What has not changed, however, is the Desert Surf is positioned to be the world's first upscale destination resort anchored by a surfing lagoon. Experiential travel and leisure is the newest and most exciting segment of travel and resorts, and this project will put Palm Desert on the map with the most desirable domestic destinations within this new industry segment. As you've often heard us say, this is not a water park. Rather, this is a premium surfing experience, fully integrated with a barefoot luxury resort and a highly desirable residential community. Importantly, the project is open to everyone and will welcome the public at large, and in particular is being developed and will be operationally programmed with families in mind. Our site design has evolved to bring the surf center, beach club, hotel, and restaurant and bar offerings into a more seamless space, which has the additional benefit of reducing the bulk, mass, and scale of the overall project. But given that the project's overall outline was well received when approved by the council in 2019, we've tried to remain as consistent as possible with the prior expectations. It's also important to note that the plan in front of you today maintains all the significant economic and tourism benefits and revenues of the original project. And as you know, this project will also be a meaningful job creator for the city, with hundreds of jobs in construction, hotel operation and management, and surf lagoon operations and management. We've said it before, but it bears repeating. We chose Palm Desert and Desert Willow because it's critically important to get the relaxed destination feel and aesthetic of the site just right. The spectacular golf courses and the surrounding mountain backdrops provide some of the most beautiful scenery in the whole valley. And we're confident our surf resort will bring to fruition the early vision of city leaders who first developed the Desert Willow Resort concept. Our project team is comprised of long-term committed environmentalists, and it is absolutely critical to us that we set a strong example for environmental responsibility and resource use in the man-made surf industry. Water is of particular concern, no surprise there, but we're proud of our unique Turf for Surf program, which will convert enough existing turf on the adjacent golf course to native desert vegetation to save more water than we actually need for our surf lagoon. We are extremely proud of this project and hope the City Council and the Palm Desert community share our enthusiasm. With that, I will briefly introduce our team. The developer is Desert Wave Ventures, represented by myself, and also on the line are our other partners, Don Rady, John Luff, and Marco Gonzalez. Beach Street Development is our surf destination developer and includes myself, John Luff, Blake Hess, Marco Gonzalez, Jay Leopold, and Ulrich Sauerbrey, all of whom are also on the line. The architecture was designed by AO Architects, represented by Bruce Greenfield and Travis Gold. Our environmental consultant for the project is Terra Nova Planning and Research, represented by Nicole Christ. Civil engineering is provided by the Altum Group, represented by James Bazua. Cloward H2O is our aquatic engineer with Alan Clausen on the line. And Jarvis Payne is here from RGA Landscape Architects. On behalf of the entire team, thank you for your consideration and support tonight. We hope you love the project as much as we do. Now I'll hand it over to Bruce Greenfield to provide an overview of the project, followed by Nicole Christ to address a couple environmental issues and wrap up our presentation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members and city staff. We appreciate the opportunity to present the project to you. It has been a long night, so I'll move through at a pretty good pace. Feel free to interrupt me with questions at any point along the process. Additionally, staff did a great job of presenting the project overview, so I'll try not to duplicate that level of information. So to start with, the project consists of the hotel in the upper left corner of the site, the surf center right next to it. They share a drop-off and a porte-cochere. Villas that ring the lagoon with a walkway, pedestrian walkway connecting all the villas to all the amenities on the site. Some stacked flats that are located on the outer ring of the site, across the road from the lagoon. And then we have some site amenities. We have a homeowners association in the left-hand corner. They have their own pools, their spa, some gathering areas, little clubhouse with a kitchen, living room, big screen TV, and then a grassy area behind for birthday parties and events and get-togethers. Towards the bottom or the home plate portion of the lagoon, we have pickleball court, we have a pump track, and then we have the works that run the waves in the machine in the lagoon. Okay. This is your entry view of the property. Looking at the back of the hotel, this is the roundabout on Desert Willow, and you would pull into the site and see the porte-cocheres immediately to the left. This is where you would drop off and go to the hotel on the left or into the surf center on the right. We've taken that kind of iconic waveform that relates to the lagoon. It relates to Palm Desert based on other architecture in town, and it relates to that mid-century modern feel. And we thought it just created a great arrival to the property and really symbolized the property and the town. We lit those up at night so that they're even cooler at night with the LED lighting. And we are reflecting some water wave features onto the underside of it to make it really feel like a very unique environment. This is the arrival to the hotel. So the lobby is straight ahead. The lobby is lined with glass so that you can see to the right, you have a glimpse of the Porte Cochet and the villas beyond, of the lagoon and the villas beyond. And when you step into the lobby, those walls are glass so that the lagoon is the major backdrop to the lobby. As you progress into the lobby, you would have your restaurant and bar with their outdoor patios overlooking the pool area and the lagoon itself. So this is the surf center. This was where you would enter that. It also has the waveform roof and the specialty lighting. It's got the whole project is made up of these mid-century modern materials. You have plaster, you have CMU block, both kind of a precision block and a decorative block. You have the wood beams and the exposed wood, the stacked rubble walls, and in other areas we've got metal and stone, metal and glass all around. So really ties to mid-century modern, really ties to what you might see in a beach community. And we think it's just a great spot for these materials. This is the back side of the hotel. You can see the pool amenity deck at the grade level. On the second level of the hotel, we have the hotel pool and bar up there. The guest rooms wrap around that. The meeting room, spa, and fitness are also on this level over on the left side. And the rooms that have views of the lagoon have some pretty nice balconies overlooking them. And right on the right side here of the hotel are the larger suites that have very expansive balconies. And we've got a little beach club at the ground level on the right side of the hotel. We have some fire pits and seating areas, and then pools that the surfers can use and the hotel guests can use. And then the surf center, and you can see the wavy roofs of the Porte Cochet all the way off to the left. So creating a really unique environment. These are the elevations. And again, just to reiterate the materials, we're using the stacked rubble, the weathered metal, kind of a Corten steel look, plaster, glass, precision block, and a weathered wood material. It's a composite material so that it'll stand up in the desert, but it has that weathered beechwood kind of a look, driftwood kind of a look. And that's the upper elevation. On the lower elevation, this is the Porte Cochet to the right. Up above, you have the meeting room on the right. The spa is that long window on the left, and then guest rooms above all that. And the spa has a great outdoor patio that overlooks the mountains and the golf course. Okay, then the lagoon. And the other, all four elevations tie together and use the same materials. A lot of articulation in and out through the building, a lot of recess. And on the right-hand corner, we have a little bit of a taller element. We've got the awnings there, and that's kind of signifies the entrance to the property, that the Porte Cochet is back there. This is the surf center, same materials, same wave roof, same feel. And I think the whole thing ties together as a complex. This I put in because this slide shows the villas and how they relate around the boardwalk that's next to the lagoon. And then it shows the homeowners association in the middle with the pools on the front and the grass behind, and then the stacked flats behind that. So this epitomizes the residential portion. This is a view of the villas along the lagoon. So if you're sitting in your living room or up on your bedroom deck, you're looking right out on the waves. People are surfing right by your, it's really, really cool and very unique. Very few places in the world have that kind of a view of surfing. Okay. And then here are some views of the villas, what they would look like. They're 2 stories, and some of them will have roof decks on them. So they have a partial 3rd story, but mostly an outdoor deck. And that just for stair access. But that's a look at what they look like. This is the homeowners association building. And again, same materials, same kind of a feel, a big, great space in the center with support of a kitchen, so that you can have events there, birthday parties, family gatherings. It has a big lawn behind it and the pool amenity deck in front of it and great views of the surf.
May I interrupt for a quick second, Mr.
Yes,
Can I trouble you to enlarge the screen? I really want to take in all of the work and the detail that's been chosen. So if I can, it seems that it's not in the full presentation mode or full screen. I want to, again, get the full detail. Thank you.
Yeah, let me try. I want to.
Down at the bottom right of the screen, you'll see the little presentation slide next to the Zoom, right over that next icon to the left. That one right there. Didn't start the slideshow.
Yeah, on my one screen, I know what the problem is. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Sorry to interrupt the flow, but again, I want to just respect all the work.
No problem. I want you to see it. So sorry. I think I'm sharing the wrong screen. Is that better? Hold on. Is that better?
Much better. Thank you so much.
Okay. So yeah, sorry I was sharing the wrong screen. So, okay. So this is you can see the villas, the beach in front of them, the boardwalk that rings the lagoon, and then the stacked flats in the back and the homeowners association. And again, I know I'm moving kind of fast, but feel free to interrupt at any point. Well, are you seeing the flats? No, you're not seeing floor plans, are you?
Not yet.
We're still looking at the lagoon, and it's lovely.
And it's Are you seeing floor plans now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm not the best technical guy. And this gives you an idea of the stacked flats. There are 2-story buildings, and some of them step up to 3 stories in some locations. Typically, the closer they are to the lagoon, they'll be the 2-story, and then the outer ones would step up to 3 for parts of it. They're fully self-parked as well. And using the same material palette. Here are the stacked flats. So you can see the end is 2 stories tall, and then it steps up to 3 stories in the middle. Give you an idea of those. Then we have a maintenance yard at the back. This is all the equipment to run the lagoon. And we try to design this with a nice screen wall, nice landscaping, a very simple building, but gave it some articulation and used the materials so that it blends in with the neighborhood and makes a nice backdrop to people photographing surfers from the beach. So we have a nice landscape ring there, and then these buildings are just simple and clean. These are the materials that we're using: a stacked rubble, Ocotillo ceilings, the composite wood look and wood ceilings, perforated metal with a core 10 look to it, a weathered steel kind of a look, louvers and glazing, and just a mix of things you might expect to see in the desert and you might expect to see in a mid-century modern location as well. Here you can see kind of the decorative masonry block and the precision block that we're mixing, metal fencing, and then our color palette, which is drawn from the desert, and a mix of beiges and grays. Planting palette. Now, we're showing a Mexican fan palm here, but those have been replaced with a California fan palm. So I just wanted to let you know that this presentation didn't get updated because it was submitted a while back. And here are the shrubs, the same, we're using that same kind of palette that you use on the median of Desert Willow Drive, which is just beautiful. And we're trying to use that same kind of colorful, lush desert palette that's, just works great. And that is our aerial from the beach side. And that's all I've got, and am available to answer any questions or turn it over to Nicole.
Okay, are there any questions at this point, or are we ready for Nicole? Okay, Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Mayor. I greatly appreciate the detail of showing the native flora. I greatly appreciate the use of the ocotillo as a repurposed natural resource. And so with that in mind, I was wondering if you had considered the use of hempcrete as a sustainable alternative to concrete. So I was wondering if that's on your radar, if not now, or would it be in the future?
We haven't. I haven't used that product, but it is something that we'd be willing to look into, especially maybe for some of the paving. And I don't know if it's used in a structural way, but we do have a concrete podium. So it is something that we would look into. I'm not familiar with it though.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Are there any other questions? Okay, then perhaps we can see Miss Chris' presentation.
Bruce, if you could forward one slide, please. Madam Mayor and members of council, I just wanted to touch on the environmental aspect of the project. As Rosie indicated, we prepared in 2019 an environmental impact report, which analyzed the maximum development potential for the property, which was 350 hotel rooms, 87 villas, a 6-acre lagoon, and a number of offsite improvements that are required, including the turf reduction program. That EIR was certified by the council with the first approval. And as is permissible under CEQA, we prepared an EIR addendum for this project. The specific plan portion of the project has not changed, and so all of those impacts remain the same. We did, however, study the currently proposed project with the 92 hotel rooms and the 83 villas, and that analysis found that based on the EIR's analysis, the impacts of the currently proposed project will be equivalent to or less than those that were studied in the EIR, and therefore the conditions required under CEQA for the preparation and adoption of an addendum are present, and that is the appropriate document for you to be looking at this evening. Bruce, next slide, please. The other item I wanted to touch on was water. The table on the left shows you the analysis in the EIR and the analysis that we did for the addendum. As you can see, the surf lagoon remains the same. The other portions of the project that have changed have been analyzed based on their current anticipated water use. And that reduces our total project water demand by 50 acre-feet a year. The commitment and the mitigation measure for the turf reduction program are maintained under both circumstances. And so as a result, we are able to reduce water demand to 7.6 acre-feet a year net, which, as Eric and Rosie indicated, is the equivalent of 58 residential units under CVWD's standards for water use. It's also important to note that because we will be using dry wells as well as waste areas within the golf course for drainage and disposal of water, that we will be providing some recharge of the water use into the aquifer through a natural percolation system. I could talk at great length about other environmental issues. and I'm prepared to answer any questions, but that is the extent of the presentation, and we are all glad to answer any of your questions should you have any for the team directly.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments? I just want to share too with any of the public who is watching, everything that you've seen on the screen as far as illustrations and blueprints of the buildings, of the landscaping, is all in the packet that we get. And it's also online if you choose to go on and look at council packets. And it's in all the packet that is attached to this tonight's agenda. So there is a lot of information in there for you. Are there any questions? Well, I see none. I have just one minor question, and this has been very thorough, and my questions have been answered, the questions I did have. But I wanted to ask, I saw that you're doing a lot of passive solar, and I appreciate that. And you talked about the mid-century modern, which also achieves some of that passive solar requirement. Are you doing any solar?
So the residential units will be provided with solar, and the commercial buildings will be provided to be solar ready. So they'll be ready to accept solar panels and have that piped into the electrical system within the building. But the actual panels themselves are not currently in the project.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No questions, no comments?
I just say, Mayor, I had met with the developers previously a few weeks back, and they've answered most all of my questions already. And I just want to thank them for a wonderful presentation.
Okay, and I do see that Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan has his hand up.
And I heard you say comments, was that correct?
Yeah, I said questions and comments. Go for it.
All
right.
Let's close
Move it along here. So, look, not just based on the presentation tonight, but over, I don't know how many years it's been that we've been going through this process, including multiple council meetings, study sessions, meeting with the developer. It's very clear to me that this is a first-class project with a first-class developer, that this will be a game changer, not just for Desert Willow, not just for our city, but for the entire Coachella Valley. It shouldn't be lost that this project will bring a significant number of jobs to the valley, and many of them high-level jobs, and that it will diversify our hospitality niche, not only into the shoulder seasons, but into the summer. It's when people go surfing and they don't mind 105 degrees if they're in the water. I applaud the developer and I applaud staff, Eric Sehan and his team, for addressing the concerns that we've expressed over the last couple of years, both with development standards, environmental issues, and the financial impacts and the city's financial participation. All of those concerns have been addressed to my satisfaction. So for all those reasons, I move approval of staff's recommendation.
Okay, I'm going to second it because I see Councilmember Kelly's hand up and I would like to acknowledge her.
Did we close the public hearing?
I thought I had. Did I? Oh, okay. There are many shades. So no, let's just rewind for a second. I'll close the public hearing and then I'll entertain a motion from Sabby. Can we just take that again? You don't have to do the whole thing.
Oh, I'm going to read the whole thing.
Oh, you don't have to.
We haven't been here long enough.
No, you don't have to. Okay.
Move for approval of staff's recommendation.
Okay. And I will second, and I see two hands up. So Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. Members of the public have heard or read about proposed surf facilities other places in the Coachella Valley. I want to feature that what's before us tonight is vastly different from those proposals. All of them have far greater environmental impact for the benefit of far fewer people. You've heard tonight about the state-of-the-art efforts that are part of this proposal to conserve water to the extent that this can be operated with the amount of water that would be necessary for 58 residential units. That's phenomenal. I don't think anyone would guess that that's feasible before seeing the detail behind this proposal as to the state-of-the-art efforts that are being proposed to accomplish that. And we've had about 3 inches of paper to study for this evening, which established that the same degree of state-of-the-art planning has gone into all related environmental issues, lighting, noise. This is truly a Palm Desert quality proposal. And unlike some others, it's not being developed for members only or for the elite only. As you've heard, the applicants have gone to considerable efforts to make sure that this will be a broad-based community resource. And we've received written comments of support from the YMCA, establishing that they've reached out to collaborate with them to make sure that youth can be introduced to surfing who wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity. Some of the youth they're already supporting wouldn't be able to make trips to the beach, wouldn't be able to pursue an interest in surfing without these applicants stepping forward. So in addition to all of the potential economic benefits that Mayor Pro Tem Jonathan listed, which are compelling, this is truly a special proposal for the benefit of the whole community, affording a singularly attractive amenity.
Thank you. Councilmember Quintanilla.
Thank you, Mayor. No surprise, I love the environment and I will forever beat the drum of environment always. And when this project first came to my attention as a resident, I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of alarm bells that were going off. And in my first meeting with the developers, I put all of those questions and frustrations forward. And I am very pleased that in the time that has elapsed, there has been a very dedicated and consistent come on, brain. A very concerted effort to ensure that the pristine desert and the beauty of the desert is highlighted, and being able to encourage that, to be able to say, look what our partners did here. Let this be a flagship situation to say, this is how you can take your energy efficiency to the next level. And I'm very, very pleased to see the incarnation that we've been presented with tonight, and my very deepest gratitude to staff. Again, staff has put in a lot of hours in this, and all of the people that put all of the details, every single last dot that was placed. That presentation was beautiful, and I look forward to seeing the partnerships that will continue to grow as this trickles out into the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to comment? Once again, I do see we do have a number of public attendees. Anything you'd like to know that you saw tonight is on our website as usual, and in much greater depth than what you saw tonight. So if you have questions too, you can always reach out to us. So we have a motion and a second. Can we have a vote, please?
Pro Tem Jonathan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Nastandi?
Yes.
Councilmember Quintanilla?
Aye.
Mayor Harnick?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, and thank you for answering our questions and giving us so much time on this.
Yep.
Okay, so city manager comments.
I do want to ask Thomas Soul, if he's still on, to provide the council and public with a couple of quick event disclosures before we wrap up tonight.
And I don't see him on.
If he's not, then we will.
I do not see him on.
I'll work with Thomas this week, and we'll get something out to council then.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So seeing no unfinished business, this meeting stands adjourned. Our next meeting is February 10th, 2022. See you then.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Stay healthy, everyone. Keep getting tested.
Meeting adjourned 7:46 p.m.